Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 234. I'm Steve Crane, and I've got Nate Hale in the garage with me. As always, we are flying solo tonight, so there are no guests necessarily, but we're looking forward to some crowd participation on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Listen to the audio. Each week we go live on both Facebook and YouTube. If you guys want to hear when we're on, make sure you turn on the notifications on either one of those. It's up to you on which one you want to follow or both. And make sure hopefully you share that. And we hopefully will be able to get you a part of the conversation. Tonight, like I said, episode 234, we've got for part one, we've got, as I know it's called, or I've looked it up according to the always accurate Wikipedia, it's Daviess County. Daviess County. This is the straight bourbon whiskey. So this is the blue label bottle. There's two other offerings on a regular basis, and I think they have some limited ones as well. This is a fairly new, revitalized brand name. So we're going to go over that tonight, and we're also going to be smoking a brand new Nica Rustica Adobe from Drew Estate. So this is brand new, just launched. This is something that I had smoked a sample of. We were trying to get it in earlier. The shipping was delayed, as everything is these days. And so here we are with the Nica Rustica Adobe. Nate, how was your week?
It's been a good week. Monday, I took the day off from my main job and worked a charity golf outing in Dublin. There was 144 golfers, and I was there representing Tinderbox. And the other company that was sponsoring that particular hole was providing the cigars. And so had a lot of people take them up on the cigars and had a lot of positive feedback, because one of the cigars I took was the BS Gold.
Nice.
Because whenever I do those type of events, I like to provide something mild, medium, full body, try and hit as many different pouches as I can.
So what did you bring? BS Gold.
I had the BS Gold for medium body. For mild, I had the Oliva Connecticut Reserve. And then for full body, I had the AJ Fernandez New World.
Nice.
And I had the Toros in all of them.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Cool. That was your whole week? The golf outing?
That was the highlight.
It's fine.
But other jobs been good too this week.
Good.
I had a massive undertaking of a project I had to do at work and got it done a lot earlier than I thought I would. And hopefully they appreciate the fact that I did that.
I hope so.
Only had to investigate about 800 accounts over the last 3 days. So yeah, fun stuff. Because no one did it on Monday while I was out. I had coverage for it, but no one decided to actually do that. And just like, we'll leave it for Nate when he comes back on Tuesday.
It's the way it typically works.
Yeah.
So I want to mention, appreciate you sharing that. That golf outing is cool. I'm glad you guys got to do that. It's good weather for it.
Oh, it was perfect.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
So we're lucking out on weather right now. I want to thank you guys who do the patreon.com/bourbon and BS podcast. The monthly contributions help keep this going. Love it. Hope you guys share that as well. We've got some great swag. You can do Venmo at Bourbon and BS if you guys want to go ahead and be a part of, the community. If you want to donate a bottle or whatever, you can do it through that. Or like I said, the Patreon thing. I've got the BS when the world hands you some BS lighted up. You've got the BS raglan or 3/4 sleeves. There's podcast shirts, everything on buyjack.com/bourbon and BS. So hopefully you guys check that out. We got some hoodies coming up for the fall. It's on there already for the BS Cigar Company and Bourbon and BS podcast. So love that. And also I want to thank, tonight we're smoking the Nica Rustica Adobe. That's going to be something that is brand new from Drew Estate. And thanks to Tinderbox at Easton, just got it in Columbus, Ohio. They carry it in 3 sizes, Robusto, Toro, and Gordo. And this is, we'll talk about the price point, but this is, we'll see what we think about it along with the price point. But I think you guys are going to be really surprised and very happy to hear what this is going for. Just kind of like the other Nica Rustica. So looking forward to that. Also, Altadis USA, continued support. We have the Monte Cristo White Series for the second cigar for part 2, which the part 2 tonight was recommended or actually suggested by a community member of the Bourbon and BS community page. And it's influencers, but not necessarily what you might think.
Oh, okay.
Influencers. We'll see where it goes. But looking forward to that for part 2. And then also BS Cigar Company. BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver are now available. The gold's made by Plasencia, and the silver is made by Espinosa, who Eric is going to be making an appearance in Columbus in the near future.
Awesome. Love seeing Eric.
So stay tuned for more details for that event. That's always a good one. Love it. But yeah, thanks guys very much. And I think that's pretty much it for the announcements. I'm going to share it. I hope you guys do. I just tried a new feature on the Bourbon and BS community page, which they have a new way of tagging it. So maybe that'll bring some more listeners. We're trying to figure it out.
The number earlier. So.
Right now we're over 30. It spiked to 40 something. So guys, share it if you're enjoying it. If you're not doing anything else on this beautiful Wednesday, at least in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm going to light up.
Well, and with this being episode 234, this is exactly 4.5 years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
4.5 years in, and the topic is influencers. Good job. Good job.
Again, not exactly what you think.
No.
So what do we know about this bottle? This is Davis County straight bourbon whiskey.
So this is a product from Lux Row Distillers, which is owned by Lux Co. It was a brand acquired in, I believe, 1993. They have 3 staple products, and then they have a limited edition. This is, like you said earlier, this is the straight bourbon whiskey, and it's actually a blend of wheated bourbon and rye bourbon. So you got basically wheat, rye, malt, and, of course, corn. All in that. But yeah, so it's a blend of 2 different mash bills. So because of that, we don't know the exact mash bill on what's in the bottle. It's also not age stated.
Right.
This actually came out in February 2020. So
February
right before the world went to shit.
Sure.
Is when a new product was released. They also do a Cabernet finished one, and you had said, like, I thought about getting that one, but we just did a Cabernet last week, and that didn't hit too well.
Yeah. I was like, let's not do it 2 times in a row, right?
Hey, Greg Snyder, thanks for tuning in.
What's going on, Greg?
One of the most knowledgeable people we've ever had on the podcast when it comes to whiskey.
Definitely up there. Yeah, absolutely. He's a wealth of knowledge, great interview, great conversation all the time. I absolutely love it. All right, so this goes back. It says, you said they started 2019, right?
This came out February 2020.
2020. Got it. So this says on here, heritage from 1874. And I don't know if you looked into that at all.
I did not.
So did you mention, I'm sorry, I was trying to share some stuff here. It is from Lux Row. Yeah. So big name behind this one. And it is kind of an ode to Davis County. And so looking into that a little bit, it's interesting because it's just got this. They relaunched the brand. They call it an ultra premium family of bourbons with 3 variants. You mentioned that. 96 proof on all 3 major bottles, right? So you have, like you said, this one, obviously what we have, the Cabernet finish, and then also the French oak finish, all coming in at 96 proof, which is, I like it. The brand was bought in 1993, and it's honoring that Davis County. Davis is Daviess. So it is a little bit different spelling, but that is something that one of the first distilleries, and there's a lot back in that Davis County. I don't know if you looked it up.
Well, I'd looked up some of the other brands that fall under the Lux Row name. So go ahead with. Well,
this is what's interesting about this, and I mean, I'll save you guys some time here on looking this up. Hopefully, you can kind of bear with us here. But this goes way back. Davis County, it's in Kentucky, and this particular one. This is the Lux Row. That's not what I wanted here. Hang on. It was super fascinating when I looked into this. So Owensboro is the biggest city in Davis County, which we've heard before. Owensboro,
which is not that big of a city.
It's not. Yeah, total population in Davis County is just over 100,000 people. All right. And it's nearby to Davis County in Indiana, right? So this is all in the tri-state area. But this it's got a lot of history there. It was established in 1815, and then you've got some, basically you have some of the stuff between then and now. I'm not going to go through all that stuff. What really blows up is as of 1880, 1880s. So the following list of distilleries operated in 1883. One of them was Daviess County Distilling Company, which was founded in
Greg Snyder
1874.
chimed in because it is Daviess.
Daviess.
The internet lied to
well,
us.
Once again, look at this. You look at this. Thank you, Greg. I was hoping I should have reached out to you.
Yeah, on Wikipedia it says
Wikipedia,
it's
which is
Daviess.
never wrong, for Christ's sake. All this stuff I'm about to tell you could be a complete lie. Shit.
Just shut down Wikipedia. No.
But thank you, Greg, for the correction on that. I needed that. So yeah, so you're 18. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 listed distilleries in Daviess County.
All right.
In the 1880s.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
How many now?
Now I think it said it's back up.
Oh, has it? Okay.
I think.
Because obviously a lot of those would have gone away.
Oh, no.
Prohibition.
Sorry. No. Prohibition knocked out most of them.
Yeah.
It helped pave the way for nearly 20 other large distilleries that operated in there by the early 1900s. But then now today, only 3 remain in that actual county. Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting. Again, I'd love to have someone on from Lux Row to kind of go into this history a little bit. But it was pretty cool to kind of see where this is coming from. But let's did you have anything else on the whiskey? What were you looking up there? So more Lux Row stuff.
Yeah, so Lux Row also includes Rebel bourbon, which I think Ohio's is getting a new, I think it's a cask strength from Rebel.
OHLQ, so that's Ohio Liquor. They're just crushing it right now.
You got Ezra Brooks, which I love their rye, and I am sad it's no longer available in the state of Ohio. Obviously, you have Daviess County. Blood Oath is another one, and that one's usually a pretty expensive bottle.
Yes.
And then one of our favorites, David Nicholson.
Oh, yeah. I still think that's like a sleeper for a lot of people that are just going in there without hearing a lot about that. I love that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one.
So what do we think of this? When people are asking, what are we smoking? It's the Nica Rustica Adobe, brand new. But there's the spelling on the screen for you guys on what Wikipedia says Daviess County, but I will absolutely take Greg Snyder's word over Wikipedia on this one, that it's Daviess.
No, it's so obviously coming in at 86 proof, you're not expecting something that's just going to, light fire on your palate and be overly heavy.
96.
Or 96.
96.
96.
So 40, a little different.
48%. 96 proof.
Yeah.
It's actually for 96, it actually comes across fairly light initially.
You think?
On the nose, it's very bright on the nose, kind of like a lemon zest and vanilla on the nose. And then on the palate, it's got a nice initial sweetness that kind of coats a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's also very bright on the palate forward. And then the finish kind of takes a little bit of turn compared to the palate, but opposite of the type of turn that last week's bourbon took. That one took a turn for the worse. This one actually takes a good turn.
I would agree with you there. It's got a nice warmth to it, I think. You say it was bright up front, or is it the nose? Nose. He's got whiskey in his mouth.
But no, initially on the palate, like the way it kind of sits at the front of the palate, it's kind of got this honey type of texture and flavor to it. And then as it goes back and down, you kind of start to pick up this oakiness and a little bit of char and spice to it.
Yeah.
But
would you say cinnamon or some other type of? It's weird. Got a little heat.
More of a pepper. I wouldn't say cinnamon.
Pepper. It's definitely like brighter, like you talk about. You know what I mean? Like it's got that little bit of sweetness, kind of undertones throughout, in my opinion. But it is a nice flavor overall.
Yeah, it is. It's very pleasant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got a nice.
There's a lot of complexity and depth to it because that finish kind of makes that turn to a little spice to it and a little more bold on the finish than on the palate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a fairly complex whiskey compared to some of the other ones that we've had.
I didn't know what to expect with this, right? So I swung by the local liquor store, and I like I said, I didn't know. You had a couple of bottles that you were going to suggest. We I don't want to say we ran out, but we kind of did our run. We've got some more samples coming. One from Barrel Bourbon, which I'm looking forward to. So thank you, Aaron, and everyone at Barrel. You guys are amazing. Looking forward to that. It's literally that morning I saw the post on Instagram, and I'm like, cool. And then I look at my email. I was like, hey, we have a new one. I was like, I know.
At the Barrel Bourbon Vantage.
So looking forward to trying that one. But on this one, it's like, so going through, I've looked at these before. I didn't know anything about it. So for me, here in Ohio, this is $39.99.
Okay.
So all three of them are $39.99.
The three staple ones.
Correct. Yeah. This one, the straight bourbon, you've got the, like we said, the Cabernet barrel finish, and you have the French oak barrel finish. So I'm like, all right, $40. Now we talk about a lot on this podcast that it's like, that's the average price. And I think that's any more fair. It's about everything's I think about to take a tick up. But I mean, with that being $39.99 on the shelf, I haven't really seen a whole lot of people posting this. It doesn't seem to be sought after necessarily. But for $40, I'm interested to see where it goes. Calling it straight bourbon whiskey, and then finding out that it's weeded bourbon or weeded whiskey and
it's
rye.
Weeded bourbon and
weeded
rye
bourbon and rye. So it's interesting that they call it straight bourbon whiskey.
Well, so
I know the majority.
So it's still a bourbon. Straight just means like it spent all of its aging in Kentucky, where it was distilled.
Well, technically, I guess you're right, but it's like it kind of is, I think, a little misleading that you're doing a blend with that. But again, you can have it works. But I thought for $39.99, I did think that this was something that we could try. I didn't think you had it. You later ruined that by saying you've had a pour.
I had
at McClellan's.
I had a pour of this one, and I think the Cabernet finish at McClellan's. That's been a while. I mean, within the last year. But usually when I go there, I have several pours of stuff that I haven't tried yet. So, and I had notes on it, but I deleted that note because I was like, when am I going to need that again? Son of a bitch.
Yeah,
kept it.
Who would have thought you might run into it in the 230s of the show?
No, I actually looked up what they describe as their tasting notes for it.
Okay.
So on the nose, they say honey, vanilla, and caramel, which I had said honey. I also said lemon, I think, on there. Palate, oak, caramel, graham cracker.
This is what you got?
No, this is what they list on their website.
Okay.
So
I'm fishing another bug out of my whiskey. That's two now.
Yeah.
My first glass. That's fantastic.
Well, yeah, cool. Oak, caramel, and graham cracker. And then finish, long, warm, sweet finish with a touch of spice.
Yeah.
The funny one, because anytime you look up other people's reviews, like a lot of them will have stuff that are similar, but then I also like finding one of those that's just out there.
Okay.
Like out in left field. So here's another one. Nose, orange zest, honey lozenge, slight oak,
like a
pleasant
Ricola.
opening, and hint of ethanol, which I love on the nose.
It's always nice.
Palate, oak, which I had that one. Honey, I said. Pepper spice, vanilla, orange rind. And then finish, vanilla, dry oak, cigar box. Isn't that just cedar?
Wait, what? Question what?
The finish. Vanilla,
cigar box,
dry oak, cigar box, and green peppercorn.
Oh my God. Cigar box. All right. I mean, I like the smell of cigar boxes.
Absolutely. The wood ones, not the paper ones.
Right. Yeah, the cedar line. But I mean, even the paper ones with the tobacco in there, it does smell good.
That is true.
I like the interaction we got going on right now. Jonathan Herring says, I like the bottle old school. It is. And it does say Lux Row Distillers around it on the glass. It is a very nice blue. I almost, it was inspired tonight by the Nica Rustica Not quite the same blue, but you're in the ballpark there.
That's right.
Says sour mash on there. What else does this say? Because the marketing is nice. I mean, I will say it's a nice looking bottle. The other bottles, again, the Cabernet and the French Oak, they have the same label basically, but just different colors.
Yep.
And then obviously they have a different print on there. This says on the back, this unique bourbon honors the rich history and tradition started in 1874 by the Daviess County Distilling Company, one of Kentucky's original distilleries that helped contribute to the state's reputation as the home of great bourbon. So yeah, distilled and aged in Kentucky, bottled for Lux Row Distillers, Bardstown, Kentucky. And yeah, it's a fifth, so 750 ml. We noticed that it looks darker in the bottle than it does
in the glass.
In the glass, yeah.
Yeah. In the glass, it's kind of got, more of a honey, like a light copper note to it. But like when it's in the bottle, it actually makes it look more like like a dark caramel type of color.
Yeah, I posted a picture on social media beforehand, and it did look, I mean, obviously with the camera, I didn't really do much on the filtering or anything like that, but it did look a little darker. But yeah, in the glass, especially where we're at right now, that looks like apple juice. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're right.
It does. It looks very different. That's interesting. Very interesting.
Is this the first time you've had this?
It is. Like I said, I've walked by this several times. I've seen pictures of it, but I haven't really heard much about it. And as I was telling, it's funny, we have the gentleman at the local liquor agency right near here. He's like, "Where you been?" And I said, "Well, we've been getting bottles actually sent to us, for the show." So I said, I haven't had much of a need for as many things, recently for that. But and he said, "Well, have you had this one?" I said, "No, I haven't." But I mean, again, at $39.99, I don't feel too
not like you got taken.
Not worried, because like at least we're going to talk about it. We'll probably kill the bottle as we typically do. But it's one of those that I don't want to necessarily do something where it's going to be this like, oh, I'm going to drop 80, 100, whatever it is, and then it sucks.
Yeah,
I want to do a little bit more. I mean, I want to do a little bit more research before I put or you put or the podcast money goes out to something like that. I mean, we'll do it once we start running out of stuff. But I mean, it's just I felt pretty safe on this one that that we could at least have a fair assessment, and I'm glad. I kind of like it.
Yeah,
I think it's a decent bottle. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like I'm blown away by it. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna make sure I always buy this. But I like it. I like the history behind it. The fact that they're doing some kind of homage to Daviess County. I think that's great. I feel like if I'm saying that wrong, Daviess County, Greg's just laughing at us right now that I said it right the first time, and now he says that, and I'm saying it the whole time. Some people are going to tune in and be like, what an idiot. James Allen Young, no, that's a half a bottle. I'm looking at it right now.
I actually brought it, James. I actually brought it because I told Steve, because Steve had texted me earlier today. He's like, hey, do you have a bottle in mind? And I've got 3 bottles at the house that I've been holding on to do for a podcast. One of them is the half bottle of 1792 bottled in bond. Mm-hmm. Steve said, yeah, go ahead and bring that, and I'll swing by a store, So I thought you were going to pick up a backup bottle.
Nope.
So then when I walked in the house and I saw you have this next to your computer, I was like, oh, I guess this is what we're doing because Steve's doing a write-up on it. So, but I went ahead and threw it on the shelf. We just got to make sure no one drinks it before, and that includes you and me.
We'll be fine. We still have some of that chicken cock rye and bourbon. I have had a few sips of that.
Yep.
I think that's one that, even though it's at 59 and 69 here in Ohio, that's one that I would, especially, like, I agree with you on the rye. It's a nice rye.
Oh, I love that rye.
So for 69 on the rye, I can see myself typically having a bottle of that in my stash.
Well, and I told you, so recently we had Traverse City on, and we did their new Lakeside Peach, which hits Ohio in October.
Yeah.
Well, earlier this month, their North Coast Rye hit the shelves, so I picked up a bottle of it, and I actually did a blind taste test with you at the shop with another rye. Both of them are coming in at 90 proof, and they're both straight ryes. And yeah, I was curious to see what you and Josh thought of those, doing a blind taste and not even knowing what they were. And Josh had it first, and Josh was great. He nailed the proof on it before I even said anything. And I was like, yeah, that's also a rye. He goes, wait, what? Never would have guessed that. He had no clue that it was a rye.
No.
So.
No. All right. We'll get back to the whiskey here. We're smoking the Nica Rustica Adobe. So the original Nica Rustica was a completely different blend. We just had we were at a Drew Estate event that we hosted at Tinderbox at Easton, and I had actually talked about this stuff. The Nica Rustica was one of the cigars that everyone that attended got. It was the Undercrown 10-year, which we recently did. They all decked out, and then the Nica Rustica. We were hoping to do this cigar that we're smoking tonight, but due to shipping delays, it did not happen, unfortunately. But it was interesting to me because we talked about the Nica Rustica. Came out in 2013. It's a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, San Andres binder, and Nicaraguan fillers. Mm-hmm. Completely different than this one. But when that came out, it was Nicholas Melillo behind the brand of that, the Nica Rustica, and they wanted a cigar at a lower price point that was kind of in the essence of like for the people type thing, you know. They
budget friendly.
It was rustic, as you can see, like rustic Nicaragua, right? Yeah. And so that's something that they branched off with this. But it was funny. Nicholas Melillo was actually the backup bonus question for the mystery box at the event. I didn't mention his name the whole time, and someone actually got it, so that was very cool.
Did they not get the first question?
No,
which is what you asked on last week's podcast.
What was it?
What was the first brand?
What was the first brand, blend, whatever you want to call it, that Drew Estate put out, and when?
La Vieja Habana, 1996.
1998.
98.
Company was founded in 96.
All right.
But then it came back. Anyways. Ray, put that up on the screen. We appreciate that. This is something that we've talked about before. I'd like to give a big shout out to Steve and the Tinderbox at Easton for putting together a wonderful package of cigars. That's something that, you know, Ray, he's out in Vietnam, and he had a contact here in the States that I probably shouldn't say that because he could probably maybe get in trouble. Anyways, we can curate a package for you wherever you are and get it to you one way or another. Typically, we ship it. Sorry, Ray, if I just got you in trouble. So, yeah, Nica Rustica, they basically wanted to come out with another blend as an ode to this, which was pretty cool.
You said the first one, the original came out in 2013?
2013.
So this is the first extension off that line in 9 years.
Correct. Now, they made some changes not only to the blend, but they recently changed. When you first had the Nica Rustica in 2013, they went full-blown budget look and everything else. It came in like was it a trapezoid? Almost like,
yeah,
it was a trapezoid bundle of, I think, 25 cigars that were a bear to stack, especially if you had one open. But I mean, you basically played like the Tetris with that. But it had I think it was a pigtail and a closed foot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This one doesn't have either of those. So it's just basically a regular Parejo that you've got the Robusto, the Toro, and the Gordo. This, I think that's it. Let me make sure here. Yeah, just the three of them. So this one here, we've got a 6x52. The Robusto is a 5x54, and the Gordo is, as you can imagine, a 660. But this is completely different other than the fillers, but this is a Ecuadorian Habano wrapper.
Habano, okay.
Ecuadorian Habano wrapper.
Okay.
A Brazilian binder.
That's Brazilian tobacco has been making a huge wave in the last couple of years. There's been a lot of brands start growing tobacco and utilizing it coming out of Brazil. I love that because so many different flavors now to play around with.
Absolutely. So you've got that, the Brazilian wrapper, and then Nicaraguan, right? So what do you think of this cigar? Because, again, I'll tell you guys kind of what the price is here in just a moment.
So, you know, knowing the regular Nica, like this, one thing I do like, and it may be a little hard to tell on the screen, especially since we got a couple fans blowing in the garage, but like this, there's a lot of smoke coming off this cigar, which just like the OG,
it does not quite as much.
Not as much. Like that Nica looks like looks like a chimney when you're not puffing on
It reminded me of like the Liga Privado number 9, the way that it billowed off of that wrapper leaf.
But no, like when you said Ecuadorian Habano for the wrapper, like that makes sense because it's got this nice velvetiness to it, but also it looks at some spots like a little toothy.
Yeah.
I love that Habano wrapper, but it's got a nice, pleasant flavor. I wouldn't say it's as bold as the original Nica, but it's a little bit more complex in the flavor, I think. And because of that, I think this would play well with a lot more spirits and whiskeys than the original.
I would imagine as well. I was looking for this here because there was a cool little thing here. I can't find it. I looked up a lot of stuff on this, but again, being so new, I was hoping that we'd be able to do this with a Drew Estate rep possibly. But Adobe is named for. I'm gonna find this again. I think this is spicier, completely different blend, right? I mean, so I would say medium plus. I think they qualify as medium to full.
Okay.
I'd say medium plus, just because I think there's a little bit of strength there that might come through as we smoke it a little bit more. But I do think that it's got a nice spice to this, and I think that's intentional. I think the construction is pretty good. Like I said, this is the first one I've smoked since I had a sample. What do you think?
Mine's got construction-wise, mine's got just a little bit of a tunnel in it, which I get a lot of times from quite a bit of cigars coming out of Drew Estate's Esteli factory. But outside of that, like it's still burning fine, still burning evenly.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can still see a decent amount of smoke coming off of it, even with the fans in the wind blowing through here. It's got some spice
Got it.
Even though it's not a full body cigar, it's got enough spice on the retrohale that there's a lot going on through the nose.
Yeah. Smooth. Adobe is Spanish for mud brick, and that's where, mud brick, the Pueblo come to mind in the Southwest America. But this is something that I guess they use down in the Nicaragua area a lot, and the Esteli. But this is, I know that Jonathan Drew basically was talking about how more or less your family down, in Nicaragua, doesn't matter where you're from type thing. But in his, Jonathan Drew was like the co-founder of Drew Estate. I don't know what his title is these days necessarily, but he is still kind of the figurehead of the whole company. And it was along the lines of, this is light up this inexpensive cigar. It's a little more rustic. It's a little bit for the people type of a thing, which I like that sentiment. And I'm happy that it doesn't smoke, I guess, half the value. Because again, I will tell you guys, this does actually come in on the shelf in Ohio after tobacco tax. This is a $6.95 to $7.95 cigar.
Holy shit.
So MSRP you're looking at is $6. Let's call it. $6-ish, $6 to $7 or whatever. So you're looking at this on your shelf, depending on where you're at. I'd say probably $6 to $8, depending on the size. Right in line with the Nica Rustica, which I assume they're just going to continue calling the Nica Rustica. It does say broadleaf, I think, where it says Adobe on this one. That one says either Connecticut broadleaf or just broadleaf. So when I was talking about the packaging as well, where they had those paper bundles, now recently they rebranded it. Everything looks the same on the cigar, but it actually comes in a box now. And the box has some, again, it's not like super high-end classy looking, but it is a nice solid wooden box. You open it up, it's got some artwork. This, they went with this beautiful, what is that? It's not sky blue. It's a lighter blue. What would you call that?
It's like an aqua.
Yeah. A lot of people would call it maybe like Carolina or
Tar Heel blue.
Yeah, something like that. But so you look at that price point, you might get scared away a little bit, but I think by the Nica Rustica itself, the original, and now this one, it's a solid smoke, especially keeping at that price point in today's world. Like the cigar prices right now, you can barely touch a $6 to $7 or a $6 to $8 cigar.
Yeah.
I have a nice sheen on the wrapper of this one. It's a solid smoke.
Yeah, I agree. Effortless draw.
Mm-hmm.
I know, the last draw I just took, I was looking at the head of the cigar and just tons of smoke still pouring out of the head of that cigar even after I had drawn through it. I mean, it's got good balance of flavor on the palate. It's not overwhelming or bold on the palate, but then through the nose, boy, that kicks it up a notch. There's a lot more going on through the nose.
Yeah, for those that don't smoke as many cigars, more the bourbon drinkers or whiskey drinkers, or just like the show in general, but he's referring to retrohale. So you got a lot of smoke, I will say, when I looked over, like a lot of smoke. But the retrohale, basically, you're drawing into the mouth and then you push it through the nose. It's not an inhale where you exhale through the nose. It is different. But when you are able to do that, the nice thing about it is that it really changes the expression and the palate of the cigar. I mean, you definitely get more from it.
Yeah, because, I mean, we've had cigars where,
grab that.
Cheers. We've had cigars where on the palate, not a whole lot of spice going on, through the nose, ton of spice.
Yeah, we just had one of those recently.
And then also vice versa. We've had cigars where on the palate had a lot of spice, but then through the nose, that spice was gone. And it's really interesting when you get cigars that'll come across so drastically different on the palate and nose. And that, there's something to be said for a blender that can come up with a cigar that's that complex and be able to do something like that. It's obviously cool. A lot of research goes into doing that.
Oh yeah. This is, I'm reading some more of, some of the sound bites, or if you will, or quotes from Jonathan Drew here, the founder and president of that. But they have a big thing with their artwork. It's called Subculture Studios. So this was something that was, put together, the original artwork for the Nica Rustica. They had a size that's more of like a Toro-ish size in the original. If you remember the Brujito, which Brujito is native shaman carved some 6,000 years ago on a rock in a mountain near Esteli.
Okay.
So there's a lot of history, a lot of what I like about what they do there. And it was interesting. I just recently found out from Tom, the newer rep from Drew Estate, right? He's the newest regional sales manager. And he was he basically pulled it up on the map. We were looking at Esteli, where the La Gran Fabrica Drew Estate, their factory, which when they put it in there, and we talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago with the Underground, right?
I don't think we did.
They put in this factory back in, I'm going to forget exactly when, 2014, they moved down to Miami, their offices. When they put up this factory, it was 96,000 square feet. Which was the biggest in Nicaragua, the 5th largest in the world at the time.
Wow.
And from what I understand, what I've been told is that they put it in an area that was not the greatest part of Esteli. And so they were able to...
What do you mean, not the greatest? Like crime?
Yeah,
rough?
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. So again, don't quote me on this. This is a story I was told, but it was interesting. They just have a lot of respect, and it seems to be very mutual respect for Nicaragua and Esteli specifically, right?
Okay.
So the story with Drew Estate is just very cool. In 2004, they went down to Miami, 2014 is when they were actually acquired by Swisher, which I can't believe was that long ago.
I know, right?
But so this factory went up in the 2000s. But anyways, 96,000 square feet. And I think they've expanded since then. So it's just a very cool operation.
So they went from
love it or hate it. The acids and the infused stuff they put out there, you really put them on the map.
So they went from like 60 square feet in the World Trade Center.
16
square feet. So a 4x4 area in the World Trade Center to 96,000 square feet factory in Esteli. All right.
This is started by a couple, I believe, fraternity brothers.
It's growth.
A little bit of growth, but they went all in. So it's just a really cool story. I mean, that company just went all in every step of the way. And then now they've been acquired by a major corporation. And again, say what you will about some of the things that happen when that goes down. I think it's fair to say, not to speak in specifics of Drew Estate necessarily, there's growing pains, right? I mean, you're trying to keep the product consistent, but also you have new people calling the shots, even though they say you're calling the shots still, type of thing. But I mean, it's a growing pain type of situation that
they're answering to someone else.
I think that they are still working through, on top of everything that's happened more recently with the shutdowns and everything else in the last few years. And so just like every other company, they are really trying to push through the best that they can.
I don't think Drew Estate's been one of those companies that after they got acquired, the quality of their product has gone down. I know we hear a lot of people talk about that when when certain brands, especially brands they love, get acquired, like, oh, this doesn't taste like it used to. Obviously tobacco crops change year to year, weather, soil, all that stuff. But I don't think Drew Estate is one of those where the quality's gone down. And you may have brought this up when we did the Undercrown 10, that one of the things you would like to do is like go tour that factory and taste an acid before it's been infused. Just to see what actual quality tobacco is going into that cigar before all the infusion process takes place.
That's one of the big things about Drew Estate that people, I think they didn't realize at the time, but that was the thing that really kind of put them a little bit different, is that they were using premium cigar tobacco and infusing them in a way that was different than your typical flavored cigars. So,
which when you then hear the name Swisher, that's not what you think of when you hear Swisher.
No, absolutely. But I like this cigar. I think this is something that, again, leaving price point out of it, it's a solid cigar. I mean, there's so many new cigars every year, you know what I mean, still to this day. So there's just, thousands of cigars you can pick from. I don't know if this would be anyone's favorite. It might be someone's favorite at, $6 to $8. You know what I mean? I think this is, it has less competition out there in this price point. So I like that. But I think overall the construction is solid enough, especially for that. But I am interested on how nice this Ecuadorian Habano wrapper is. I mean, it just looks like a nice wrapper leaf.
Yeah.
That could be on a much higher price cigar.
Yeah. The one thing I don't get from this cigar that I typically get from a lot of Habano cigars, and it's probably because the Brazilian tobacco and then all the Nicaraguan in the filler, but a lot of times when I smoke a cigar that's got a Habano wrapper on it, I get a little bit of nuttiness, almost like an almond type of flavor to it. This one doesn't have that, but it's got this nice woodiness and spice, a little bit of spice on the palate, a lot of spice on the nose.
It's got a long finish too, I think.
Yeah.
This stays on the whole palate a while. You say woody, it's pretty good. A woody spice kind of just lingers for a while without over drying your palate.
Yeah.
Like I'm not getting
it doesn't
cotton mouth. I mean, it feels like it's about to get there and it doesn't. So it's interesting. I like it.
But I think what you were just talking about with that little bit of woodiness and dry, slight dryness to it without getting cotton mouth. Like I think that and it being a medium plus cigar, I think that is another reason why this would be a cigar that goes well with a lot of whiskeys, because when you have that little bit of dryness to it, it actually makes your palate a little bit more receptive to some of those sweeter notes.
Yeah.
And, a whiskey might come across a little sweeter, might come across a little thicker in viscosity when it hits your palate. And it's not such a bold cigar that it's going to overpower whiskeys too much.
Yeah. And going back to the Daviess County straight bourbon whiskey, after smoking a little bit of that for a little while, I will say that you're on point there.
Thank you. It's actually making me get a little bit more flavor and, even different flavor notes out of the whiskey.
Yeah, I would say so as well. That's nice.
Mm-hmm. And with all that, I mean, how well this pairs with this whiskey and the flavors and quality of the construction. I mean, if you hadn't told me this was a $6 to $8 cigar, like I'd expect this, coming in more, 10 or more.
Right.
But yeah, that's impressive.
I would agree. If you guys have had either the whiskey or the Nica Rustica Adobe, if you're watching live right now, make sure you comment and let us know what you think. Whatever you're drinking tonight, smoking, let us know what you guys are smoking and drinking. If you listen after the fact, you can always chime in on the Bourbon and BS community page on Facebook or the Bourbon and BS podcast page as well, or reach out. You can make comments on the Instagram feed. That's Bourbon and BS podcast. What do we got? Steve acted like that hurt to say Nate was on point. It didn't hurt that much. No, jeez. Try to be nice and have an open conversation, and what happens? Get your balls busted. Thanks, Tim.
Not by me.
Tim, it was great having you on the show for the last time a few weeks ago.
Thanks for that bottle.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, that was great. Enjoy South Carolina. But no, yeah, it's yeah. Anyways, let's get to, if you guys don't have any other questions or anything like that, Ryan Jones. I'll throw these up on the screen here. Oops. There we go. Ryan Jones sipping on Larceny and smoking Romeo y Julieta Blue Band. I assume that's the Reserva Real Nicaragua. It's made by AJ Fernandez. Solid medium smoke. Probably goes well with the Larceny out there. Oh, Tim Dodge says, no worries, man. Ball busting is free. Jonathan Herring from Forged Cigars. Room 101 Farce with some Eagle Rare 10. Rubbing it in. He sent me a picture that he got a bottle of Eagle Rare, and it still says age 10 years on there.
On the front or the back?
On the front.
I've got 3 bottles. I'm trying to think if one
of them like $30-some.
Yeah.
And then we got good old Ray Cheshire. Coffee and just finished my breakfast. He's at the other side of the world. Trying to line up a payment for someone on the other side of the world during business hours is a little rough.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, he paid this morning. We're trying Facebook Messenger audio call. That didn't work this morning, so finally I had to call the shop. He wanted to called my cell phone. I'm like, I'm not going to pick that up because I don't know if I get charges for that. I said, call the shop. Let's put that all on you. But that's all right. Oh, Lamar says, I think they just put the age statement back on the Eagle Rare bottles. That could be. I haven't seen one in the wild in God knows how long. I wish I could find that. But
I think the last time you and I saw one in the wild was a year ago in Louisville, when they were asking $100 for a bottle.
Right. No. And Jonathan actually did. I mean, he got it for $30-some.
Yeah.
So he got it for retail. He's down. I think he was probably in Texas where he lives now. So I don't know where he got that. But I'm glad that he's cracking it and already enjoying it.
Well, maybe I'll bring a bottle when you and I just hang out on a non-podcast day.
I had this much left in a bottle that I just decided. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna finish that. You know, I'm not. Why am I sitting on this?
Calvin Bullet and Black Label Trading Company Lawless.
Nice. Calvin's that Bullet, just Bullet Bourbon, Bullet Rye, Bullet 10-year. What are you drinking? Good to hear from you, Calvin.
Tim Dodge, a Canadian ice wine.
Wow. And Christoph Sumatra. Jonathan Herring was in Texas. Yeah. It's fantastic. All right. So this is the part of part 1 here. We'll roll through this. See where we're at here. Yeah, it's about right on time here. So we have a rating process on this show. So if you're listening for the first time at this time of the show, we do 10 being the best rating, right? So out of 10, 10 being the best, we do 3 ratings. One for the bottle, which is the Daviess County straight bourbon.
Straight bourbon whiskey.
Straight bourbon whiskey. It's a mouthful. And then we do a out of 10 rating, 10 being the best on the cigar, which is the Nica Rustica Adobe. And then we do, for whatever your reasons are, right? This is your rating system, the pairing. So the pairing of those two, however you want to rate it. Do they complement each other? Do they take away from each other? Do they bring something out from the other one way or another? But again, out of 10. So 3 ratings out of 10. Calvin says he is drinking the Bullet 10-year. So I love that. That's actually a good Bullet bottle. That 10-year.
I remember years ago when that first came out, I think Tinderbox and Fido were having a little party on Fido's patio, and they were doing a mixology contest using the Bullet 10-year. This is a long time ago.
The Camacho event?
I don't remember what cigar it was. But a good buddy of mine who loves his whiskey went up there, and literally for his cocktail, he just poured it straight in a glass and put one ice cube in and goes, all right, I'm done.
Nice cocktail.
Like, well, that's a good
10 year and some ice.
Yep, that's a good way to go. That's a good way to do it. He's like, I'm not fucking this up with any of these other mixers and all the stuff they had there. I don't think he won, but it was a good effort.
Good effort. Nate, as you take a sip. Whiskey, cigar, and pairing, what are your ratings?
On the whiskey, I'm going to give the whiskey an 8. It's got good flavor. I actually enjoy it more now than the first time I had it. That's probably because the first time I had it, it was not my first pour of something that night. Yeah. But no, just on a fresh palate, like has nice flavor. Some of that flavor comes across a little light, like with those honey and vanilla notes. Mm-hmm. Those aren't overly bold flavors. They're a little bit more delicate. But, for a, 96 proof, like it actually comes across a little bit lighter proof than that, I think. Mm-hmm. But that's just because that flavor, it's not a bold, heavy caramel and spice type of flavor. It's a little bit more subdued and delicate than that, but still, good bottle, good flavor, especially coming in at that $40 price point. Like, yeah, that's a good price point and it's a good bottle. On the cigar, I'm going to give this cigar an 8 as well. I enjoy the flavor. Like you said, it's got good construction. I no longer have a tunnel in mine. It burnt through. It was just
through there a little bit.
Yeah, it was a small little section that had a tunnel.
Nice.
Smoked through that just fine. Love that it has that smoke kind of billowing out. Not as much as the original Nica, but still produces a lot of smoke. Easy draw, good flavor. Again, kind of like with the whiskey, the flavor on the cigar is a little bit more subdued as well compared to the original. Mm-hmm. Lighter flavors, more delicate flavors, but it's still a good smoke. And that retrohale really surprised me. Mm-hmm. I probably went through half the cigar before I retrohaled, which I know you can't not retrohale.
Very true.
And so, like, after you had that little sneeze and you're like, yep, a little bit of spice through the nose. I was like, oh, let me try that out. And I was like, that's why my eye was watering for so long.
It'll get you.
It'll get you. But no, like, again, like I talked about earlier, that level of spice was not on the palate. So when it came through the nose, like it really caught me off guard, but it was, that's a good thing when a cigar's got that much flavor through the nose. So I really enjoyed that. And then for the pairing, I'm going to give the pairing an 8.5. I think these actually.
Someone predicted you're going to do a 7.5 on.
Jonathan Herring said I was going to do less than a 7.5 on the cigar.
Did you say less?
Less than.
All right.
He said less than a 7.5. But I think
that's right.
I think this is actually a good pairing. Like I talked about earlier, that little bit of woodiness and dryness on the cigar that you had mentioned makes the palate a little more receptive to this whiskey. So as you're getting into the cigar and going back to the whiskey, that flavor that initially came across the palate a little light and delicate now comes across with a little bit more viscosity. Yes, Jonathan, I did the decimal just for you. It comes across a little thicker, a little bit more viscosity, and the sweetness that's there is a little bit more pronounced. Like it's got a thicker, honeyed flavor to it, going back and forth. So I not knowing what the cigar was, and brand new cigar that I hadn't smoked with any other type of whiskey, I'm pleasantly surprised at how well these two went together.
Good. Side note, Lamar, who's listening, who's commenting,
Sent you a picture that has
he
the
just
10
got that.
Yeah.
So now it looks like they rebranded it. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it was a little slower, or they can say that, right? But he just picked it up August 11th, 2022. So appreciate that, Lamar, sharing that with us. I'm just happy to see it's out and about again. You know what I mean? A little bit. I mean, like I said, I went into the store. What was that? Around like 5:30-ish.
Yeah, but doesn't your store get their stuff on?
No, it's today, but it's in the
Wednesday.
morning. Sometimes they'll have some, nothing crazy. All the Buffalo Trace products are gone. But when I asked the guy that, again, he might be watching right now, and forgive me, I forget your name. I need to ask next time I'm in so I can call you out and give you a shout out. But so my apologies on that. But he said when he came over, he's like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while." And I was like, "Yeah, just looking what you had and didn't know if you had anything like, new or special." And he's like, "Yeah, you missed it all." I said, "Well, I figured as much." He's like, "Yeah, it's back to being crazy where people are standing out before they open and all that good stuff." So
I don't miss
oh
that.
well. Oh well. The whiskey, I'd agree with you. An 8 on this bottle. I think it's a solid bottle. I wouldn't necessarily call this one of the budget bottles, but now you're at the average price, if not a hair or a tick below, being $39.99 on the shelf in Ohio, at least. I think you're going to see some people starting to like this bottle for the price point it's at. I think that, again, this is a solid bottle. It's got the history as far as the story goes. It's, it's Lux Row. They're doing a lot of big things. I think they might be giving it some attention to this one. It's, I don't know, unique. It's a solid, it doesn't just blend in with everything else.
Okay.
But I wouldn't call it the most unique bottle. You know what I mean? It's got good flavor. It's what you're expecting. You dive into it a little bit more, not only the bottle itself, but learning about it. The fact that they took the wheated and the rye and blended those. It's a nice project. And again, for the price point, I'd say it's a solid bottle to try if you haven't. I'm happy that I picked it up for us tonight just because it was something that I had been seeing. I will try the Cabernet again at some point and the French oak. I probably get the French oak first, just because some of those Cabernet finish. They do 6 months on that one. I don't know how many months they do the French oak, but I mean, I think next buy would be, all right, let's try the $39.99 French oak one. See how that goes, and then maybe I'd do the Cabernet.
And the other thing with that, like we've had quite a few of the different offerings from Lux Row, and this one is different and unique from their offerings.
That's fair.
It's not necessarily unique from everything else on the market, but it is different enough and unique enough from what they offer.
Yeah, for sure. Nica Rustica Adobe. I think that people, all right, if you go into it, you're expecting, you're a Nica Rustica fan and you like it. That's not this cigar. Don't go into it thinking that, this is going to be like, I like the Nica Rustica, so I'm going to like the Adobe.
Yeah.
You may or you may not, but this is a completely different blend. It's a completely different cigar. It just shares the Nica Rustica and the kind of homage to the area, right? The whole project. So that's what they're doing there. The only thing that it shares is the name Nica Rustica and more or less the price point of the original, right? So the price point, I saw Ray's comment about your rating, especially for you. He says that as it's only $6, shouldn't it be a 10 on the rating? I'd give this cigar, including the price, so not just completely objective on it, but being subjective with the price point, I'll give it an 8.5.
Okay.
I think it's a solid cigar. If you're smoking medium bodies, you're looking for a medium body, some spice to it, you know what I mean? A lingering finish like we've talked about, and you don't want to necessarily try something new for $15 to $20. You want to try something new and keep it at 10 or so. And you see this one, I would absolutely encourage you to try this cigar.
Definitely worth trying.
It's definitely worth a buy of one. If you get a good deal on a 5-pack of this, or say a mixed 5-pack of the Nica Rustica broadleaf, Nica Rustica Adobe, and it's a good deal, definitely I'd recommend getting that for the price, if you're looking for something, because it is such an interesting It's just an interesting blend for the price.
Yeah.
And again, the wrapper leaf, it's not the prettiest, but I mean, to have a sheen on that Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, I mean, you can see it in the garage light here. I mean, it's pretty impressive. So
I wonder if,
I don't know where they're keeping the cost so low. Maybe it is some fillers or whatever that they're trying to utilize in a blend.
I was wondering, I was getting ready to say, to that point, I wonder if that's the price point is helped because of that Brazilian tobacco. There's not a whole lot of it being utilized, but it's starting to grow in popularity. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Brazilian tobacco is starting to grow in popularity a little bit. They may be able to produce some of those tobaccos in Brazil a little bit more consistently or at a lower cost than in some of the other countries like Nicaragua, Honduras, Dominican.
Stab in the dark would be that you see more Brazilian Matafina and the Arapiraca just as wrappers recently.
Yes.
You see it a little bit. I think AJ's using it in the binders a bit. But now I think what you'll see, again, shot in the dark, just my personal feel is that you will see some more Brazilian filler and binder leaves being used in blends because it can't all be wrapper leaf.
That's true.
You can't grow this stuff and just all use the wrapper leaf. So now you've got blenders and you've got factories that are like, all right, well, we want the Brazilian Matafinas, the more popular right now, but you have the Brazilian wrapper leaf coming in. We want it to be on these blends. I can see some of these farms, if they don't own them themselves, I can see some of these farms being like, oh yeah, you can keep buying that, but this time around you need to take some of this other Brazilian tobacco because I'm aging this filler grade tobacco or the binder tobacco.
Yeah. And
I can't just keep growing this for your wrapper leaf. We'll give you a deal on this stuff, but maybe that might be the cost. It's not necessarily a Brazilian wrapper that's going to be keeping the cost down. That was the big thing with that broadleaf on the original Nica Rustica that it was trying to. That was the big statement I think that Nicholas Melillo said or he was making at that point was that the fact that I'm giving you a Brazilian or a broadleaf wrapper leaf at $6.
Yeah. When we also saw recently with one of the cigars we've seen some Brazilian Cameroon as well.
Yeah.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
But oh shit, I forget where else I was. Oh, so I talked about it long time ago, but so in a traditional curing barn, when they first pull the leaves and they hang them to get that green out of it, in a traditional curing barn where all the sides are open, you only get about a 15% yield for wrapper leaf. If you have one of those where it's closed sides and they have doors that they can just take off or open up in order to be able to control the temperature and humidity, they can double that to 30%.
Yeah.
And there's only a handful of companies that actually have climate controlled facilities where they can cure that tobacco, which is very expensive to do in those countries. But that then doubles it again to up to 60% yield for wrapper leaf. But still, to that point, that means there's still a lot of tobacco that is not.
So, yeah.
If they're only doing 15, 30%.
A good guess then.
Yeah, you're probably going to start seeing a lot more Brazilian tobacco.
Calvin Wood said that's exactly right. I asked which part. I don't know if he's referring to that, what I said there. But I mean, it makes sense. Because, again, like that technology is there. And I mean, that when I say technology, not just necessarily the climate controlled part, but I mean, when I was at the farms and barns in Connecticut with Altadis, they had it basically the sides of the barn because it's such a different climate in Connecticut, and they were doing broadleaf at the time. They would monitor the humidity based on the climate during that season, where they would more or less push this one board, and every other vertical board would then be pushed out. And so the structure of the barn's still intact, but that would allow more airflow through that. So, I mean, it's when I say technology, it's can be where you say climate controlled. This is like the old farm style version of climate control.
Yeah.
I'm just going to not open doors. I'm going to have half the planks, open up so I can get air going through there. So it doesn't just get real humid. Yeah.
When I used to work for LFD and went to their facilities down in Dominican Republic, They had a few of the curing barns, like what you were just talking about, where it's, walled in, and they actually had like 3 or 4 foot panels where they could remove those in order to control.
Sure.
And those curing barns were like 100 feet long.
Yeah.
At least. They also had just built a climate controlled one that was probably about the size of your house, maybe just the first floor of your house.
It's gigantic.
But yeah, exactly. But just something like that down there cost them like $60,000 to $70,000. So, and that was a decade ago.
Right. No, I get it. I mean, so Calvin does say, utilizing existing Brazilian binder and filler more because it's there. Again, this just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that's just, again, I don't want to say common sense, but you think about that. It's like, hey, here's all the binder leaf. This is the cream of the crop. Like what you were saying, 15, maybe 30%. Here's that.
For the wrapper, yeah.
It's like, cool. Yeah, we'll give you this money for it. Like, cool. And then like the next season comes along, like, shit, we still have last year's.
But that also,
opens
the doors for the different possibilities of different flavors and blending those.
Absolutely.
With some of the
and that's what I was
Nicaraguan
going to get to is I think that's the evolution of this is how you get some of this tobacco showing up in different parts of the blend that you didn't see before.
Yeah, it's a different climate, different soil. So it could produce different flavors. And so it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next 5 to 10 years and how they utilize that tobacco in more products.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing goes to waste typically in this in tobacco, I guess, field. No pun intended. I was trying not to do it, but then I got a loss for words. The pairing, getting back to my ratings, which is what we were doing here, I would give the pairing an 8. So 8 on the whiskey, 8.5 on the cigar, 8 on the pairing. I like the pairing. Again, I'm not calling $39.99 a budget bottle of whiskey, but I mean, again, this is a fairly inexpensive pairing. You pick up, say you got, 4 or 5 buddies, and, it's like, all right, well, everyone is chipping in. Everyone's having a tight week or whatever, whatever it might be. You're trying to do it on that what we call the baller budget or whatever.
Balling on a budget.
This is something like that. You buy a $40 bottle of booze and everyone gets a $7 cigar. You're going to have a decent night.
Yeah.
And I think this could be something a little spicy, a little fuller than maybe something for an inexperienced smoker. They're going to know they're smoking a cigar for sure if they light this up. It's not going to be necessarily too much for them, but that lingering spice, that long finish might be a little bit much for them. They might want a little bit more of a mild cigar. So if you are at least a little bit more of a than just a novice smoker, I think this would be a good pairing. You answering Lou there?
Yeah.
With that being said, guys, thanks for tuning in for part 1. We're going to take a quick intermission. We'll stay live on the stream. If you guys are enjoying it, take a break, go to the bathroom, whatever. If you're listening on the audio, if you want to keep listening or at another time, click over to part 2. Part 2 tonight, Beyond the BS, is going to be, it's called influencers. But again, this conversation is not just about social media influencers. This was suggested by one of our community members, and give him a shout out if he wants it. I don't want to throw him under the bus there, but
Ray.
You guys can comment. You can message the podcast or Nate or myself if you guys have any suggestions on topics for this. Again, 230 some episodes in. It's difficult to come up with every week, but we do it.
4.5 years of topics.
Still going strong. Thank you guys. Make sure you share, like, and review, and we will see you in Beyond the BS part 2. It'll stay on this stream. So again, if you guys are listening and want to take a break, come on back with us. If you have any questions during the break, do that as well. I do want to thank our sponsors for the show before we go to the break. You guys, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast, monthly contributions. If you want to do a one-time contribution, Venmo at Bourbon and BS. We've had a couple of those. We appreciate that. If you want us to pick up a particular bottle, hell, if you want us to get the French Oak and review that, $39.99. Send us 40 on Venmo, and we'll go out and get it if you guys want to do that.
Or the Cabernet.
If you want us to, the French Oak first, all right? French Oak first. Let's not go back to the Cabernet. Not that there's anything wrong with it.
We were just a little disappointed on last
Tinderbox at Easton for the Nica Rustica Adobe. Columbus, Ohio. They do have this in stock now, along with many other Drew Estate products. Stay tuned for, I don't know, we'll do some more of their products here coming up here soon as well. So got a great relationship with them. Tinderbox Edition does have a handful of the Liga Privada 10-year anniversary. So check that out as well while they're in stock. Alternus USA for the Monte Cristo White Series. We'll get to that. Nate's way ahead of me on the cigar, so he'll probably light that up sooner than I will. And BS Cigar Company for the gold and silver. Love those cigars. Had a gold and I had a gold today. I had a silver yesterday. And then also buyjack.com/bourbon and BS for the shirts. Nate's got on the 3-color one, the white sleeves, black body, and the gold BS logo on the back. It says Spirit Focus with the other BS logo on it. I've got the When the World Hands You Some BS lighted up shirt on in the gray and black. A few colors of that, We also have the hoodies and everything else on there. So these that Nate's wearing, great for the fall weather coming up. The hoodies are pretty lightweight, so they're good for layering as well. There's the black camo Barrelhead Bourbon and BS. Love that one. And then you have the blue and you have the black BS Cigar Company one that's got the front and back on there as well. So love that stuff, guys. Grab some of that. Support the podcast. Look good doing it. And with that being said, I want to say cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in for part 1. See you in part 2. Ray says, Liga 10th anniversary. I didn't see that in my care package.
Did you put any $30? Did you put any $30 smokes in?
No, but I probably should have done it. He would have been fine with it. Damn it. Yeah. Sorry, Ray. We get those in all the time. We don't. Shit. Jonathan, don't start shit.
Uh-oh. What, Jonathan?
Ray Chester, they didn't care that much.
Oh.
That door's not quite closed. I'm going to do that. Oh, God. Both my hips.
It's funny. The other day, I actually had a customer come in and he had picked out one cigar from him, and it was for himself. It was a Drew Estate cigar. And then he's like, pick me out one other one. Just don't be the most expensive cigar. And I was like, well, the most expensive cigar I have in the shop is $35, but it's not, based on what you're picking out for yourself. Yeah, it's probably not your palate. He goes, well, don't pick that one. Pick something else. And I didn't know how much the Liga 10 anniversary was coming in. So I was like, I'll pick that one because we just got it in at the Tinderbox Edition. And I was like, well, while supplies last, because at the time I think they had a box and a half left. I was like, let me throw one of those in there. And I ring it up for him. I was like, oh, that's a $30 smoke. Hopefully he's not pissed that I didn't go 35, but I went 30. Hopefully he was okay with that. But as soon as he saw that it was Liga 10th anniversary, he goes, oh, I haven't had that one before. I'm like, well, I hope you like it. And thank God his wife was buying some other stuff, so he may not have realized that the reason why his bill was almost $100 at checkout was because that cigar was a third of it. His wife got some other cigars, too, that were not cheap. So Jonathan Herring is asking me my favorite Drew Estate cigar.
Oh, interesting.
Like from all of Drew Estate's portfolio,
yes.
Or are we going like flavored on one side and
just Drew Estate portfolio? Answer the question.
That's a tough one because honestly, one of the first cigars, one of the first cigars I smoked when I was in college that my best friend in college turned me on to was the old Natural Elixir 550. And so it wasn't infused like the acids are, but that was one of the first ones that he turned me on to in college. And that was a really, really good smoke. Again, I was just starting out, so I didn't mind, a cigar that had a little bit of sweetness. But then again, the 3 brands that I started smoking when I was in college were the Drew Estate Naturals, LFD Double Ajero Chisel was another one. And then I want to say it was either Hoya or no, CAO. The original CAO before they sold out to General. The CAO cigars. Those were the first 3 brands that I got into when I was in college.
All right. Ray says Undercrown Maduro. I'm still a Liga Privada number 9 guy. I think that's got some Herreras Leo G. It's not bad. I like the Herreras Lee Miami. Yeah. They've
I think
got
I
a lot
like.
of
I
good
think I like
ones.
the Brasilia more than the Miami.
Okay.
Anyways, I did smoke that Herrera Connecticut broadleaf in the Lancero.
I have not.
That was a tasty smoke.
Sure was. Very limited.
Well, I know we have a customer at the shop that loves the Herrera Esteli, and he had actually asked me if we had the Maduro because he had found that at a shop in Louisiana, but that one was a Toro because it was a TAA cigar.
Okay.
And the next week, the shop had the Lanceros, and so when I was glad he came in that weekend. I was like, "Hey, got a cigar for you," and I just went and picked it out and said, "Here you go." And he goes, "Yep, I want that."
There you go.
And this is a type of customer that when I first started working at the Tinderbox, I wasn't allowed to pick out cigars for him. Like, he would either go to Ryan or Steve. And then once I hit a couple home runs with some cigars, then he would
he didn't want to talk to me.
Then he would be okay with asking me to pick out cigars. But now some of the newer guys at the shop, like Dan and Josh, nope, they're not allowed to pick out cigars for them.
I did, just before we get into part two, I do have one that I'm looking forward to, that Tom from Drew Estate surprised both Brian and myself with. Not only did we smoke the League of 10 because he gave us one, but the Liga Unico A.
Wow.
Yeah. Interested in that one. Jonathan, I'm kind of with you. I did some other things, but my staple for years was the CAO Brasilia in the Gol, the GOL, the Gol size, which is their Fat Robusto. Love that cigar.
Their original
still do like it.
Their original Anniversary Extreme was one of my favorites for many, many years.
Nice.
That cigar hasn't been made in over a decade, so it's kind of hard to still call that a favorite. And that's why, what was it, 2 years now?
Yeah.
When Monte Cristo came out with the 1935 Anniversary, which is made by AJ Fernandez, that's now my all-time favorite.
Wow.
Cigar that's in regular production.
Nice.
I love that smoke.
Good cigar. All right. You guys want to roll into part two here? Inspired by Ray Cheshire, so I expect some conversation from the crowd. Maybe share it. I don't know. Rick Rodriguez is going to be on the show as soon as we get his cigars in Ohio. We've already talked about it. I'd love to have Ricky on ASAP with the West Tampa Tobacco Company. He's got the black and the white. Really like the white that I smoked. He did send us some samples. Love to get him on. I was hoping to wait until he got into Tinderbox at Easton instead of doing it earlier than that. So, although I can maybe do it and then maybe pressure him to get it to us and get it in Ohio. I don't know.
Just kind of poked out.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 234, Beyond the BS part 2 here. I'm still smoking. You still got a little nubbin. It's gone. The Nica Rustica Adobe, that's from Tinderbox at Easton. Drew Estate just put that out. We reviewed that in part 1. If you guys haven't listened to part 1, we talk a bit about that cigar. It's now available in 3 sizes at Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. Probably also in your brick and mortars nearby you. If you guys want to shop local or shop local-ish, definitely get a hold of Tinderbox at Easton. Buy it online if that's all you have. But again, there are shops that will ship to you, and we appreciate that support. Alternatives USA, Nate is cutting and about to light the Monte Cristo White Series, which is probably one of their best sellers, right up there with their Alternatives Romeo 1875 blend.
The 1875 Bully is their number one SKU.
Yeah. Of
the Monte Cristo, the White Series is their best seller.
So we got the Rothschild, smoking that tonight for part 2 here, if I ever get to it. And then also BS Cigar Company, the Gold and Silver are now available. Thanks to everyone at patreon.com/BourbonBS podcast. You guys help us keep going. There's a $5 tier, $10 tier, and $25 tier. We haven't had a new Patreon member in a while, but I can definitely make sure that we get you, now that we get these shirts printed by buyjack.com/BourbonBS. We can get you a shirt based on that tier if you sign up. If you want to do a one-time contribution, buy a bottle for us, get us whatever. If you just are had too much to drink, you just want to send money to someone, Venmo at Bourbon and BS, and we're happy to apply that towards the show. So thank you guys very much for that. But yeah, buyjack.com/Bourbon and BS for the shirts. What Nate's wearing there, love that combo. That comes in, I think, 4 colors now. Shirt I have on, when the world hands you some BS, light it up. That comes in 2 or 3 colors, I believe. Maybe 2. Two right now.
The gray with the black lettering, and then
black and gold.
And then the original, the black with gold lettering.
Yeah. And there's some hoodies on there as well. There's the Focus on the Silver Lining for the BS shirts. There's some ladies V-necks for the podcast, and also some unisex podcast shirts.
The pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together.
That's right.
The motto of the podcast.
That's right. So check those out. Tonight, part 2, the way we do this. So anyone listening right now looking for, we had someone on the Bourbon and BS community page. He's like, I've been on this page for a little while now. He's a newer member. And he's like, I haven't seen any bottles of bourbon. This is the
challenge
part 2.
Accepted.
Well, yeah, then it got flooded with that. But this is the part of the podcast that we switch gears a little bit. We're still drinking the bottle of the Daviess County straight bourbon whiskey. We're still smoking the cigars from Tinderbox at Easton, the Nica Rustica Adobe, and from Altadis, the Monte Cristo White Series. So it's just basically kind of an extension of hanging out with friends, hanging out at a cigar shop, hanging out, drinking some whiskey, where we talk about life every week. This week, the topic, and again, this is a suggestion. It does look weird on the screen. Influencers, because everyone now, and it's funny, the way that Ray suggested this was, who or what has influenced you most in life? And I said, I like that. And he said, I was going to call it influencers, but that means something completely different these days. So I went with, let's open it up to basically all of that. Influencers. So who and what influenced you the most in life at different periods of your life? And you guys listening right now, and Jonathan, you don't have to apologize. That was my invitee. That's totally fine. He'll either enjoy it and do it, but he may not want to be a part of this and wants to just do a normal bourbon page, which they have them out there on Facebook. But we can talk about, who and what influenced you the most at different times of your life. Things, when I say what, I mean, that's this moments in life. Those are impactful moments or factors in life that happen. Talk about how you influence others. Talk about social media. We can talk about all that stuff tonight. I mean, this is one of those that, this was a suggestion, Ray put out there, and he just commented here. So I'll put his comment up there. And if you guys have any as well. So he says, I think it's important to include both positive and negative influences in your life, as sometimes the negative ones can create the bigger change / shift in your life. So absolutely. That's a great point. Jonathan puts out, my dad, no question, still is my biggest influencer. That's great. That's great to see. Nate, what do you think of this topic? If you want to start, or
sure.
I can come up with another
one of the
analogy or metaphor like I did last week, just out of nowhere.
We're not talking about 3 ships again, are we?
We're not going. So the one ship of influencing.
God damn it!
No,
it was.
It worked out well.
It worked out well.
I don't know how, but it does.
And you came up with it during part 2.
That's fun.
No, one of the biggest positive influencers I had on my life for a long time was my stepfather. But that actually began long before he was my stepfather. So my stepdad was, when I first met him, he was the pastor of a church that I grew up in. And my parents were divorced, and my mom actually had him. And this was nothing negative or against my dad, because my dad has always been in the picture. But it was my pastor, who later became my stepfather, who actually took me out to lunch one day when I was early teens, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually the one that gave me the birds and bees talk, not my parents.
How old were you?
Maybe 13, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember when it was probably earlier than that, because him and my mother married when I was a freshman in high school. So I was 15. I just turned 15. So it was earlier than that. But that was, him taking the time to do that and explain it from that perspective compared to my parents who had their issues. So it was a positive influence. And just growing up, even after he became my stepfather, like he was just a good example of what an honorable man should be. And it had nothing necessarily to do with religion, just a man who lived an honorable life that people respected, not necessarily how he lived his life, from a religious side, but just that he was of good character. He always cared about his family, his kids, from his first marriage. But there weren't people outside of his ex-wife that had anything negative to say about it.
That's
well,
weird.
that was the first one.
I didn't know you were done with that part of it. No, I think, that's great. It was, I know you have a good relationship with your father, but that's cool to see that there's another more or less like father figure that had stepped in. Not necessarily father because it's pastor, but you know what I mean? That
2 years ago when his health was failing, we knew things were going to be coming to an end soon. I was sitting out back on the patio having a cigar, and I'd actually texted him and told him like what a positive influence he had on me, and everything that he had done for me growing up and even as an adult. And after I texted him that, a few minutes later, I got a text from my mom saying that after he read my text, he went to his closet, picked out the suit that he wanted to be buried in, and then sat back down in the living room and said, "I'm ready to go."
Wow.
Which, of course, reading that, I started to bawl my eyes out while I'm smoking a cigar on my patio.
As you would, yeah.
And I actually took screenshots of those text messages. That way I have them saved and remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it's impactful. I mean, that's what the whole influence. So that's a positive one, right? All around. Obviously, that's heartbreaking with your stepfather, the gentleman you were talking about in the beginning that became your stepfather, and then where it ended up with that. I mean, it's inspiring in a lot of ways. But the influencer, I mean, I guess what I want to dive into further with some of this stuff is not only talk about the person, but how did he influence you? I think that's a big part of this. When you talk about like, influencers, not necessarily like social media, but like people in your life that impact you, you talk about him, and that is part of the influencing, right? Just the image of that person or who they are to you. But I mean, how did that impact your life? Not just, I'm not trying to interview you. I'm just like, it's just like bring it out. Like, as far as, it's who is the influencer or what was the influencer? And then how did it actually influence your life? I think that's an important thing to actually analyze, or at least like look at, you know what I mean? So that you can actually grow from it, not just grow by happen chance.
No, with him, it was such an influence on what it means to have good character and to have a good reputation. They say your character is influenced by the company you keep. And
sure,
like I said, no one that had really hung out with him that knew him had anything negative to say about him. He was just a good example for what it meant to to be an honorable man.
Yeah.
Being a man, that doesn't mean like, he was one of those that could go out and, take an axe and cut down a tree. It wasn't John Wayne or Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything like that.
Okay.
He was just a man of good reputation. And, that's not necessarily the easiest thing to come by, I think, these days.
Sure.
Because there's so many ways that, you can make yourself a bad example to others. And that just wasn't something that was a descriptor of him. I mean, it's kind of it's kind of hard to describe, everything that he did. Obviously, married my mother, took care of her. In the first year that they were married, is when my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and he was there the whole time with her through that. And they'd actually kept that from me for a little bit. It wasn't like I'd gone off to summer camp for a week, and then I came back. And obviously, as a kid, when you come back from a camp, like you have all these stories that you want to tell your parents and everything. Sure. And the first thing they did when I got home was sit me down and tell me that my mom had surgery while I was gone.
True.
So obviously, it was something that they knew had been an issue. They just didn't want that. They didn't want me to worry. They didn't want that to negatively impact, me going away for a week and, be worried about that.
Yeah.
Because there would be time for that later. Obviously my mom recovered from that. She's still alive, doing well. He always had, her best interest in mind, his kids. And then, also him being the head of a church, doing a church plant, going through a church split, replanting another church. There were always people in the church that looked up to him, and he always took it upon himself to mentor young adults. He in the old church that we used to be a part of, he used to teach a Sunday school class for high schoolers because there was no real class at the church for that age group. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of took that on. And then after they started a new church, I then took over that class. But he always would mentor on, Tuesday or Thursday nights at the house. So you'd always have a group of guys that were, college age, anywhere from 18 to 30 or 18 to 25 coming over to the house and, just learning about being a man from that perspective. And so he always wanted to, teach the next generation of young adults what it meant to be an adult.
I appreciate you sharing that because it's really, really neat to hear. Obviously, that was a huge influence on your life. And I never had the opportunity to meet him, I don't believe.
I know he rarely did he come into the shop. I don't think.
But regardless, obviously sounds like a great man. I appreciate you sharing that. I want to, while we're on this, and we've got some great comments coming in, and you guys let me know if I can share what you're saying or if you just want to keep them in the comment feed. But if you guys, again, these are some great, and I appreciate you guys opening up, Jonathan, Ray, Tim, Calvin, all you guys have seen these great comments coming through. Let us know if you are okay with that, because I think they're great examples, and we can say it on air for those that listen to the audio afterwards. And I also encourage you guys to share to anyone you think that wants to listen to this live or after the fact on any groups that you want to share. We got some more listeners tonight by doing the new Facebook feature, which I'm planning on doing every week. So I hope you guys don't mind that if you aren't getting it. I did it on the Bourbon and BS community page, but we saw a big spike. But again, it's great to see you guys. Some people we haven't seen in a while. Love that. Calvin included. Tim's been on, Ray and Jonathan, and a handful of others. So we appreciate that. So part of this whole influencers thing where everyone sees that and they're like, oh, everyone is doing social media influencer thing. There's a couple schools of thought here, in my opinion, that you have this influence and you talk about this, right? Like you talk about your stepdad. You call him stepdad or stepfather?
I usually called him my stepdad.
All right, so stepdad. I just didn't want to that's important to me. So you talk about your stepdad, and do you think, just from the hip, do you think that he cared what other people thought about him?
Yes.
You hear the same thing. Bear with me on this. Like influencers or people on social media, there's this negative thing that people talk about, how important it is, especially younger people, that all they do is care about what other people think of them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see where I'm going with this a little bit, is that there is this one school of thought that a lot of the mass media, a lot of people are like trying to normalize. You shouldn't care what other people think about you so much by posting it on social media, by doing all this stuff and going out of your way to be something that maybe you're not, which I agree with that part. Don't fake it. But I still think that we as society or people are still figuring out what the fuck to do with all the social media in the last 10 to 15 years. Okay?
Yeah.
Right? First iPhone, 2007. Not that fucking long ago. Instagram wasn't a thing. I don't know what year it came out, but we're still maybe a decade, right? So we're still figuring this shit out. I don't think there's anything wrong with caring what other people think about you, as long as you have the right for your own mental health or clarity, that you care because it's what you want to be and you're following through with it. But again, it's a fine line. Not everyone's going to live the life of your stepdad, right? And doing all that stuff. When I asked you, do you think that he cared what other people thought about him? Yes. I think we all do. I think there are certain things that we do in life that if you don't like it, I don't care. But you do care what other people think about you. That's not the first and foremost thing. But the people that you're trying to impact or influence, you do care what they think about you. Now you're changing, in my opinion, that scope of what is the intention of what you're doing. Like for your stepdad, obviously, so people that aren't religious or they don't like the church, they don't like that type of thing. People can pick apart anything they want to these days, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you're influencing people in a bad way that they shouldn't have to do it. But regardless, he liked doing what he was doing. He believed in it, and he lived his life a certain way. And he did care that the people that he was trying to impact or influence in a positive way, in his mind, with good intentions, he cared what people thought about him. And that influenced you, from what I'm hearing, in a way that it did impact you in a positive way.
The biggest aspect, I think, that he cared what other people thought was more of his reputation.
Okay.
So like I said, he lived his life to be a man of good reputation. So to the point where if someone who knew him and hung out with him was hanging out with someone else, and that person said something negative about him, it was less likely that person would actually believe it, because he lived his life in such a way that you couldn't debate his reputation and his character.
So that is, again, to bring into the more modern day influencer, if you will, what people talk about when they hear influencer, right? You have that impact on people. But I think that, his reputation, when you leave your house, you have a different personality sometimes, or everyone's got their demons, everyone's got their issues. You're not faking it, though. That's where I think the negative connotation of influencers came about. Yes. Was people were faking it.
Yeah.
They were trying to show that they are trying to show that they have their shit together. They're always happy. They're always, they drive a car, they have the wealth, they have the success, all that stuff, and they may not, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to filter through all that stuff. I just think that there's good intentions surrounding this whole influencing thing, and that's where I want to kind of guide this conversation with some of the comments we're having, is that you started it off, and I think this is the full circle that we need to maybe look at, is that you start off by talking about your stepdad. You're talking about the influence that he had on you, why it had an impact on you, and why it influenced you. And then it's, how do you think that what do you think his intentions were? I think that was a good kind of 360 around it. You take it a step further, rest in peace, if he was here, who influenced him? I mean, this is a linear history we talk about on the show too, in part 2. Something influenced him. Some people influenced him. His life. This is a constant process, So now, I'm not trying to grill Nate here, because I do want to get to this. Do you use that to influence others? What you learned from all this? from him, and how?
So obviously, I live my life a little bit differently than he did. He was not a drinker.
Welcome to Bourbon and BS podcast.
But no, it had an impact on me to be a person that it would be very difficult for someone to call into question my integrity and who I am as a person, to the point where if they walked up to someone else that knew me and said something negative about me, that they would have a lot more questions about that. And also, like, that person would actually approach me and like, hey, someone said this, and it doesn't sound like the type of person you are. I just wanted to ask you about it and see if there's any weight to that.
Yeah.
And hopefully that person who actually knows me, on more than just a personal level, would take my word first before some third party.
Yeah, I think that's based on your reputation. I'm just lose the mouse when I don't use it for a while here. Hang on. Put some comments up on the screen here. There we go. Ray commented here, and let's talk about this a little bit. So Nate's stepdad didn't set out to influence. He cared about his own reputation and clearly worked on that. He didn't force his views on others, but people appreciated his perception because of the man they saw before them. You want to comment?
Well, that kind of goes back.
Stepdad. I don't know.
That kind of goes back to something that we've talked about quite a bit this year on the podcast, is taking care of yourself and your circle first, before you start taking care of secondary and tertiary rings of people around you.
You're never going to meet.
Yeah, you focus more on who you are, so that way you and your house are in good order. So that way, then you can have an impact on other people. Because when you talk about some of the social media influencers, that give that term a negative connotation. The reason they give it a negative connotation is because they're putting out one type of lifestyle, but when the camera's off, it's a completely different type of lifestyle, or they don't have their shit together. They could be dealing with, depression, suicidal thoughts, any of that other stuff that other people don't see. And,
the same stuff, healthy lifestyle. And then they're unfortunately, like, anorexic, or they don't eat. Like this is how I'm quote healthy, or, I care about the environment. And then you're like, you find out that they don't even recycle. You're like, I don't know what to do.
They're putting on a facade for other people to see, and they're kind of hoping that that's all people see, and they don't see who they truly are and focus on that, because they know deep down inside that they don't have their shit together, but they also don't want other people to know that.
Right. Most people don't want people to know that they are struggling. I mean, that's pretty common. Ray comments after this, let's not talk about social media, quote, influencers, end quote. We all are, in a sense, whatever you put out there. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily going to dive into, necessarily like the
fitness, the lifestyle,
fitness, or like, like these celebrities that are getting, hammered right now because, like, they're all about green effort and they fly their private jet. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, not saying all that stuff. I will say to Ray's comment here on this, what I'm looking at that is that it is a mindset, didn't set out to influence. I would argue that just to the point that he did live his life to impact other people. He was a pastor, you know what I mean? He did live his life trying to work with people. You were talking about the different groups he worked with. Did he not set himself out to influence? Influence is not a bad word. I think he did. He tried to impact people, however you want to say it, right? He wanted to educate. He wanted to do that stuff. He didn't force. I agree with that. He didn't force his views on others. He wasn't trying to necessarily manipulate that word can be used differently now. We like the whole grooming thing now that's going around as well. Not going to dive into that, but it's like they're living their life trying to educate, or they're trying. Your stepdad, I think I would, if he was sitting here right now, I'd say, in a matter of speaking, he tried to influence people that he had in his life. Yeah. He tried to be very impactful. He tried to do it by example.
Well, and he also started out
by example. But if he just lived his life and you know, worked hard, did all that stuff, but didn't have the impact on the other people, yeah, he's not necessarily influenced. I think there is an effort there to work with other people or to put yourself out there. That is influencing. It's not the social media influencing thing. I think that is something that it could get a negative connotation on in today's world. Mm-hmm. Going back to the Wikipedia thing, if you look up influencing, it's, you know, social media. That's not necessarily what it necessarily has to be. I just think that, you know, like Ray, I agree with what you're saying. I think we probably all see it the same way, but I think that I would say he did set out to influence people. He became by profession a pastor that was trying to not manipulate. That's not what influencing has to be. He tried to impact people with that, educate people, let them make their own decisions, but influence them in a positive way, the best that he knew how to be positive.
Yeah.
Where other people could take it a different way, I agree. He cared more about his reputation and clearly worked on that. He didn't force his views, but he impacted or influenced people, such as you, Nate. He influenced you through his life and through his actions. It wasn't posting on social media like we're talking. Like it's different. There are some parallels there. I think that the people that do it, again, look at what we're doing here as a podcast. I mean, are we setting out to influence? I mean, are we looking out to be rich on this? No. You guys want to give us more money? We'd be happy to be rich off of this and do it full time. But the thing, what I'm saying is that we're doing it because it's good for us. It's good for people that listen, that you know, contribute to the conversation, that enjoy the podcast page, all that stuff. It is influencing in some sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar, you know, we're using different routes, but it's a similar thing to when he would have, you know, the young adults or the men's groups come over to the house. You know, those started with people that were already in the church. Yeah. So it's not like he was going out and trying to bring people over to his house. He was starting with the people that were already there around him.
Yeah.
But, you know, so when he was a pastor, obviously his responsibility, you know, was the entire church, but he also throughout his career saw that there were groups of people that he felt were getting left behind. Mm-hmm. You know, so in a lot of churches, like, you know, a lot of your big churches, they have a lot of kids programs. And then when you're an adult, like, you're just expected to, you know, sit in the service, and that's it. There's
a disconnect there.
Yeah. So he felt like there was a disconnect between, you know, high school kids, young adults that were, you know, in college or just out of college.
That's when I fell out of the church.
Yeah. And so that's who
came back from college, and there's nothing there for me.
That's who he was trying to reach out to, because, you know, they were already there, but he felt like they were getting left behind because there wasn't anything for them. So he was trying to bridge that gap and be a leader to them in a way that they may not have been able to get leadership from the church as a whole body.
Yeah. I think that was, you know, that's the whole tribal thing, right? That's the community type thing where it's like you're trying to fill in gaps that may not be there in the home life or in the home, you know, personal career or personal life, you know. You forgot manipulative. Oh, talking about. So, Jonathan, I want to go back to some of these comments. I love this, that we have some engagement here, and I hope we get more people involved. So, guys, get more people, share it to people that you think would enjoy this conversation. Talking about the social influencers, even though Ray doesn't want to talk about them, those people are driven differently. They're looking for personal rewards. A lot of people are. I get what you're saying. It's different than what Nate's stepdad was doing. Jonathan Herring says, Ray, it's a career. I don't like it or get it, but it's a way to make money in today's world by being provocative or creative. It's the world we live in. influencers on social media, it gets to a point of entertainment. It could be mindless. It could be, just scrolling through TikTok or whatever. Yes, it's short-lived to a point, but there are people that are successful just like any other entertainment, musicians, athletes, performers of any sort. It's a very small percentage that you make good money off of this, right? So, but it is something that people do make money off of, whether it be fitness, whether it be girls shaking their ass, whether it be, flying in private jets or standing outside of private jets, whatever it might, you know what I mean? Like, people do this stuff. Some people succeed that they make their reality a true reality, and all of a sudden now they have 1 million or however many million followers and they're making money. I mean, look at the Kardashians, you know what I mean? And then they turn it into legitimate businesses where they actually, because they have a following, now they can promote products and make money off of that, right? They get sponsors, and then they actually, if they are doing things quote right, they now get people around them that are also getting paid as part of their business. It turns into an entertainment business.
You know, the soccer player, Cristiano Ronaldo?
Yes.
He makes more money from his Instagram account than he does playing soccer.
The Rock at one point had in his contract, I heard that there was an extra $1 million if he promotes the movie he's in. This is, Forbes, whatever, on entertainers, right? Let's go back here to some of the things. I did like seeing this, so bear with me after I scroll back, if that's right. You have something else?
No, go ahead. I was gonna ask, like, when are we going to you? When are we gonna ask this question to you?
No one asked me yet. Tim Dodge. Let me scroll down so I can see this here.
Oh, yeah. I can read it.
After my parents, my two bosses at my first real job were military guys and spoke a lot of truth and solid advice into my 20-year-old life. Again, you can find it anywhere. I mean, you hope to find, especially as you go through your career, you have mentors. I think that's an influencer for you as a mentor.
That's that impressionable young adult.
It stage. Is, but I mean, this is something that it doesn't necessarily have to be at your workplace. These can be people that you come across or you have in your life that are successful. I've had many of those as well. I think you have, where it might be a boss. It might be someone that you respect professionally, or in you have a conversation. I think we've talked about this. It's been a while, but like people that are friends, like the cigar community or bourbon community.
About one or two guys in the shop.
It's a great thing where when you're going through things in life, you talk to these people and they've gone through it, whether it be career, whether it be their relationship, their marriage, whatever it is. And there's not always the same finish line, right? It's not like, oh yeah, we were having problems, we got divorced. Oh, I didn't like that job, so I quit. I got through it and I was impacted in a certain way and something changed me and I'm a much better person because of this. It's people around you, but it is part of having a conversation.
You've talked about it before when you were going through your divorce.
Yeah.
And, you were going through marriage counseling and all that stuff, but there were guys at the tinderbox that you would open up to and tell them what was going on. And you had guys there who had gone through similar things, or, they had their issues, and they were there to tell what happened to them. They weren't trying to tell you what to do. They were just telling you what happened to them and offer advice if you wanted it.
Life stories help. You know what I mean? That is absolutely not necessarily to turn it back on me, but I have shared that before. And I think that was something that, again, at that time, sometimes you look around in your life where you're going through some stuff, and people in your life, your family, your social circle, they try to relate if you talk to them, but they may not. Like at that point when I was going through that, like you're talking about, or when I'm going through job things at that time, a lot of my friends hadn't gone through some of those trials, right? They haven't gone through those steps in life. And if you're going off of the limited knowledge of the people around you, sometimes you do have to widen your scope. And that's the great thing about, things of like this community, about the cigar shop. If you have hobbies, the people you have shared interests with, they're going through their life. And if all you do is keep it on the one thing, it's real easy to do and just talk about like cigars, or, I like to golf, and all you do is talk about golf. That's what this whole part 2 is about, where it was modeled after that whole thing. It's like, I don't know. I like mountain biking. I'm trying to think of something like people do. I don't do that, but yeah, people that like mountain bike with other people and they meet up once a week and they go out and do this stuff or whatever it might be. Well, eventually the conversation, or if you have a close tie to that person,
It's got to be something other than mountain biking.
be like, hey, you want to grab a beer? You want to sit down after this? I just want, and you start feeling it out. You start getting different perspectives. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where it was with me at the cigar shop when I was going through that time in my life. Is I did actually have some open conversations like we do in part 2 here about what was going on. And I was open. I was also open as like a sponge of hearing all these things. I didn't take everything as gospel or what I was supposed to do, but it was nice to have that conversation with someone and hear what they had gone through. Again, with like the relationship thing, it's like, yeah, we're happily married now. We weren't at this point. People were going through similar things as far as, you know, the marriage and divorce thing. Some people were going through it at that time. Some people got divorced shortly thereafter. Some people worked it out. You know what I mean? It's like, it's opening that scope.
Dialogue.
Open the dialogue, but to open your scope, not just to get focused on that one issue. And that's when we talk about influencers, it's not necessarily the people who are just broadcasting, but it's nice that when you talk to someone that you look up to in their career and you're going through something, or you want to learn about how they got to where they are, a happy marriage that you see from where you're sitting, and you actually have a conversation. If they're willing to open up about that, their career was very typically not always smooth sailing. Their relationship life or their marriage wasn't always smooth sailing. There are always these ups and downs, trials and tribulations that go through that. That's where you really learn, I feel, from that. You know, you look at these, like we talk about, like the influencers. I love that Andy Frisella, in a sense, when he talks about business. If you guys, I forget what it's called now. It's the MF CEO project. Now it's something else. I can look it up. But great podcast. But he'll talk about influencers. He's like, no, like I started a business. I slept at the one store we had back when we started. I didn't take a salary. You know, he talks like Brian at the Tinderbox. When he first started, he worked 7 days a week. They couldn't hire employees. It's not like where he's at now is what he opened up as. It's these these stepping stones to get to that point. And when you look at these people that are successful they're financially successful, they're in career-wise, they're successful, relationships-wise, they're successful. Well, someone that's happy in a marriage, they could have been divorced 3 times.
Yeah.
The business that's succeeding right now that you look at them is like, I want to be you. It's like, well, let me tell you how many times I failed before that.
That overnight
That's the
success,
true
20 years.
influencing. Yeah, overnight. Yeah, exactly. That's the true influencing part of it.
Well, and I remember, you know, a couple of years ago when you were going through some personal things in your life, because you and I do the podcast together, because we work together, you know, there were quite a few nights where, you know, after the lights were out, you and I would talk about what you were going through. Mm-hmm. And at one point I actually told you that, because I hadn't had those same experiences that you were going through, it was hard. I felt it was hard for me to relate to what you were going through. But I also knew because of that, I wasn't trying to tell you what to do. I was more just there for you to talk to.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's impactful as well. I mean, I think that's a way you can handle it. Be, again, open. You don't necessarily have to tell people what to do and try to, in a sense, influence them. You're absolutely right. I mean, but again, it's about the conversation. I do want to share, because Calvin said I could share it. It was cool. He said that, you know, who are your influencers? He says, my sons, they're artists. This is exactly, we were talking about technology earlier. I was out with one of them recently, and I said that I was bummed that I left my cameras at home. He said, you have a camera on your phone. That's just an excuse. There are so many other people. There are so many other people. This was a recent revelation for me. So again, I mean, it's something that you can make the best of it. You know, it's like, again, these are like little moments that could change your life, right? So if Calvin is, you know, he likes to take pictures on was it DSLR or whatever, like a nice camera. Well, now you can buy an iPhone or an Android that's got
3 or 4 cameras on it.
It takes amazing cameras. You have it available to you. Just checking in on these comments here. Ryan Jones says, I'm a great influencer, talking about me. Bray says, I didn't know about that. Thanks.
Well, Ryan had said earlier that you and him had a conversation recently about something and was appreciative of.
Yeah, he's going through some health issues and he reached out again. Ryan and I have never met personally, like face to face, but we've had conversations. We've had text conversations. He's been a supporter of the podcast. I met him through social media when we were both watching the same podcast originally. And now he's been a big part of the Bourbon and BS community. But it's again someone being there. You know what I mean? And with what we do here on the show is, we don't have 1 million followers or listeners, but the people that we do talk to, the people that we talk, like, you can think that we're full of shit or we're just doing this for fun on Wednesday nights. It is fun, but it's meaningful, and to me, I get a lot from it every week. And I've said that before, is like some weeks, not as much recently, but there was a time where I was like, I'm going to do it, but I didn't really feel like doing it.
Oh, yeah.
But when I came away from it afterwards, the days afterwards, I got a lot from it because of the people that are involved, either here in the garage or out there on the feed, or listen, or they send comments afterwards. I absolutely love that.
Or sometimes it was just about actually saying it out loud and getting it off your chest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Off your massive chest. No.
All right.
So what about you, Steve? Who's been an influencer?
I do. I'm not deflecting here, but I do want to say Jonathan Herring was saying when I was going through my divorce, I had two great groups of influence, a church men's group and my cigar shop. Both supported me in different but great ways and helped me so much.
A few down, there was a lady.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yep.
A lady at my cigar shop took my phone from me and blocked my ex on everything. It was a game changer. So there's something that really took a turn for him. And then he says, 2 years later, my girlfriend, now my wife, was going to that church with me and bought a keg for my 30th at a cigar shop. Full circle. Now, that's a great story. So you don't know who's going to actually have a big influence on you. What are you asking, Nate?
Well, so you'd ask me at the start of part 2, who's been an influence on my life, and I said one person. What about you?
I this may come to no surprise to anyone, but I've had a lot of people, just like everyone. I think it's being again a little bit of a sponge and trying to, again, being a sociology major back in the day, 20 some years ago. I think that I've had every day obviously influences me, right? People in my life influence me in at different stages of my life. Obviously my parents, they influence me in so many ways. I mean, my mom still does. The memory of my father still does. But again, growing up, it's more of kind of I look at it like the socialization of actual impact. Ray didn't say I could share that about his dad, but I mean, I think it's something like that where it's like there's good and negative sides of things, right? Where they influence you, but they shape you in a certain way, and you never know how you're going to react to that. I mean, I think people that happens in people that are, quote, doing just fine, end quote, and there's people that are struggling. But you deal with those things the way that you're raised, and I think that there is something there that, my mom had a great impact on my life, clearly, growing up, even before I have memories, and my dad the same way, my brother, my extended family, the moving here when I was 7 years old to Columbus, Ohio from Chicago area where a lot of my family stayed, all of that stuff impacts me. and influences me. You know, growing up as a kid, you know, we didn't really talk about it because I appreciate you zeroing in on your stepdad. I don't have that one person in my life that just 100% just like shaped my life. It's everyone.
Like took you on.
Just everyone. I mean, it's everything I was going through. I mean, it's all the influences. I was born
influenced by community,
but just everything. And then, like, again, I was born in 1980, so it's like, you know, you went through the 80s and 90s, and you saw the change of what you spent your time on. It wasn't just people; it was technology. Where we're at now with technology, I mean, you like had that like sports heroes when you grew up. I mean, that was something that, you know, I was a Chicago fan, so like, you know, Walter Payton, you had Michael Jordan, you had, you know, like Ryan Sandberg, and like all these people you looked up to as a kid that you wanted to be, an athlete. You know what I mean? You wanted to do all that stuff. You have friends growing up that you know, like that they were. There are people in your life, I think, at all times that they like, whether you're a child, teenager, young adult, where I'm at now as an adult, that they have things that you, whether it be characteristics, physical qualities, financial type freedom or success, career, that you look up to. It's how you let that mold you or influence you. It's not that you just want to be that person. And I think that's the big thing about the influencing part of it is, for me, I've had countless people in my career, my personal life, my relationship life. They do influence where I'm at right now. And I think sometimes, you know, people have the mentality of just moving past it or forgetting the past or whatever it is. I say, like, you don't want to necessarily dwell on it or make that impact your next job, your next relationship, your next day. But it does influence it to a point that you use that to get stronger in certain areas that you feel like you are weak or have been hurt because of something that you may have been able to do more. You know what I mean? Like, you have a career path that you have that, you know, if I could go back and do it differently now, knowing what I know now, and like, you know, 10 years ago, I would have maybe handled it differently. But it's like all of those those building blocks of your life, I feel like, really do bring you to where you are now. So when I look at influencers, it could be something as small as something you see on social media, but don't just get lost in the dream of like, oh man, I wish I had a 6-pack. You know, I wish I had a private jet, or I wish I drove that car, or I wish I had, you know, millions of dollars and all. Use those as drivers to a point where you can actually influence your own life and make more building blocks to where you want to get to. And you put that effort into it. That's, for me, that's what influencers are. I obviously, I'd say, and I can't really necessarily tell you exactly why, but yeah, my parents are definitely my biggest influencers, just because they, in my first formidable years, really built me up to be who I am today. But let's not necessarily let's not skip by the fact that, like, they're also parents for now the second time, with my brother being 2 years older, but raising a family. I think a lot of parents out there are going to be like, yeah, no, I had role models and stuff, how to raise my kids, but I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. You know what I mean? So they did their best. And I think that impacted me in a good way for the most part. But I mean, again, it's you become your own person. And I think that's the biggest thing is when we talk about influencers, is that you take all of that content, not necessarily social media content back in the day, but the content of just what's coming in from your parents, from the media, from the kids at your school. As you get older, the people at your workplace, like all these steps in your life, it's not necessarily to plan. So I think that as you progress through life, and I'll go back to Ray's because he said I could share it. It's interesting because you see the person that's in front of you now, and it's not necessarily like for you, for example, not to turn it back on you, you're not living the same life as your stepdad. That's not what an influencing person does. They influence you just at the core, hopefully, or you take tidbits from certain people in your life, certain events in your life, that's not just like, this is what it is. Oh, you know, a girl broke my heart, I got fired, or whatever, like these negative things. Well, I'll just never work again. I'll never have a person in my life again, because clearly that didn't work. You take that as hopefully a strength building concept, and you grow from it.
If I may, I was going to introduce another aspect of this.
You can. I was going to talk about Ray's thing, but yeah.
So, and you don't have to drop any names. Has there been anyone in your life that influenced you from a negative aspect? And what I mean by that is it didn't cause you to do things that were negative or wrong, but you saw that they were doing something that was wrong, and so it made you not want to do that.
It's an interesting question.
If you want to think about it,
you have an answer. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So for me personally, when I was a senior in high school, I wrote an essay for a scholarship, and it was about
Ray Chester says me. Him.
It
not true.
I wrote an essay for a scholarship, and it was about this idea of people that impact you and, you know, were influencers on your life. And this was long before social media. And I actually wrote about a lot of my family, but from a negative side. Oof. Because at the time, and this is gonna sound interesting. At the time, prior to that, I had a lot of family members that had at some point in their life had been so involved in alcohol abuse or drug abuse, it affected their marriages, caused divorces, caused legal problems, caused all sorts of negative things in their life. And it was all kind of centered, for most of them, about alcohol abuse. So when I wrote the essay, I was like, I'm not going to drink, because here's all these family members that used to drink heavily, and here's how it caused directly all these other problems in their life. I'm not going to do that.
Welcome to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone.
And that is the biggest reason why I did not drink my entire college career.
Yeah, I didn't drink until I was 21.
I didn't drink till after I graduated.
So I graduated when I was 21. So same boat. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It wasn't necessarily that. I did have some people. I went to college at 17, and the way I was raised, my brother still does not drink and or really smoke or anything like that. Obviously a great man, but it was just the way I was raised, I guess. It wasn't necessarily because I had that impact like you did. But I can tell, obviously, maybe it influenced you not to necessarily let it affect your job, let it affect your relationship, stuff like that.
Yeah. They weren't examples of what to do. They were examples of what not to do.
Right.
I don't sit there at home while I'm working and just sit there and just pound whiskey all day. Even though I'm working from home, I've
seen your Instagram stories.
That's after hours.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right, I do want to get to
Ray's mad
at
me.
No, he's not mad at you. I think this is a great thing, though, because he was the one that brought this up, the topic. So I'll put it up on the screen, and I can read that more or less. Ray said, so my dad was a great provider, but that was his sole purpose in life. He was of the generation that expected to see his dinner on the table when he came home from work, but would then complain about the food provided. This taught me to always show appreciation to anyone who provides me with anything, including food. My dad also was Mr. What If. He had an opportunity to significantly change our lives while I was very young by moving to Australia, but never did. And we forever heard, what if? That's not the whole comment here. It's too big. I can't read that. Shit. scroll way back. Hang on. Oh, there it is. All it said was basically after that is, I would say this shaped me a little. And he did a laugh face. And for those that don't know Ray, I mean, that is he from the UK. You know, from what I remember of his moving around the world, really is where he was from the UK. And at some point, I know he was in Mexico working for work. He took the opportunity in New Albany, which is in Columbus area. It's called Columbus. That's when I met him. And then from there, he had moved to Hong Kong for said job. And then he met Jane in Vietnam through actual work. And now that he is, I call it more or less retired. I think he's still retired at this point. But now he lives in Vietnam. So he opened himself up to that. So
do you think that that experience from his father not taking that chance inspired him to be one of those people to not be afraid to move for an opportunity?
I would say this, and Ray, if you want to comment back on this, is not to necessarily analyze you in your childhood. I don't know. From the statement, I would say that influenced him in two ways. The positive way was he has worked his ass off to provide for his family, for his daughter, for, you know, himself included. He has worked his ass off to be the provider. What he also learned in the same regard was he saw that it maybe in his mind that missed opportunity of if they would have lifted their life up, moved it to Australia, it could have been a potential better life. There's a gamble there, right? Mm-hmm. And the gamble that his dad may not have wanted to do was to move his family, because he was where he was at and he was providing for his family. So I would say that influenced him in multiple ways, but just on surface level based on that comment is that he was influenced in a positive way that he needs to work and provide. And on the flip side of that, there are opportunities that will take you out of your comfort zone that he may not have been 100% comfortable with at first, but he kept taking those chances. You know what I mean? So I think that's a lot. He says, I learned it's important to show appreciation even for the small things. I agree with you. There were times, you know, in my life that, you know, we sit around the dinner table and same kind of thing. You know, my dad was more the, you know, he worked not all the time like that, but he worked consistently. And my mom did too after we were a certain age. We moved here and she started working again, but like she was the mom that, you know, did the laundry, did the most of the cleaning. She did the cooking and everything like that. We had meals, you know, around whatever, 6:30, get home. She'd get home, you know, change, start making the dinner. And there were times, you know, where I saw kind of the same thing that Ray did, you know, where it was like my dad would be sitting at the head of the table and be like, you know, there's little shit like there's not enough salt. Like, why is this, like, you know, why didn't we do this tonight? Why didn't we do that? And it's like, I remember having those, I don't want to say resentful feelings, but a little bit of that impact where I'm like, yeah, well, you never cook. Like, why don't you do it if you want a different way? You know what I mean? Like yeah, I get what he's saying with that. You know, you want to show appreciation, but again, I think that, you know, everyone has their flaws and shortcomings, and in that relationship between a husband and wife, if the wife felt that certain way, I think that's hopefully where we've evolved to in this generation, where you can say something and have an open conversation and be like, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings and I appreciate this, but, you know, and then maybe you chip in. But I also think a successful relationship is companionship and support and both putting work in. But there are certain things where there are, I don't want to say roles, like the classic roles, but yeah, you don't want to insult the other person or their cooking or something like that, because that absolutely turns around. It's like, all right, well, if you don't like how I do it, then
you do it.
Then you fucking do it next time. You know what I mean? So it's about the approach. And again, I think it's really about the communication, and also not necessarily always taking it for face value, because sometimes in that situation, not defending his dad, my dad, or anyone else out there, but people don't always communicate when they're fucking run down from the day or the week or the month and stuff like that. So you got to give it a little bit of effort in the communication and say, you just called me on my cooking. And maybe that might be something where if it happened, and again, this is just, again, talking openly, the other person be like, where is this coming from? Like, let's talk about this. Not in front of the kids. Let's talk about this. And I want to make sure you're happy. I don't like to feel like I'm not appreciated for the effort I put in, because if that just goes unsaid for long enough, it's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Growing up before my parents divorced, having family dinners was almost impossible because my mom was home from work around 5:30. My dad didn't get home from work until 8:30, 9 o'clock, because he was working 12-hour shifts for UPS. So it's not like we could wait till 9:30 to have family dinner, because by that point, me and my sister are just absolutely starving, because the last thing we ate was lunch at school. But then, also having the conversation. Yeah, my parents weren't great at that. They weren't great at having conversations. They were great at having shouting matches,
arguments. Because
and I can remember as a kid vividly sitting on the staircase by the railing, like listening to my parents having a shouting match in the kitchen, and it just absolutely scaring the shit out of me.
That's a situation that obviously influenced you as well, talking about all that stuff. Again, that's kind of what I was talking about. All these events or relationships in your life, it will absolutely influence you. Now, what I will say with all of this that we're talking about, Ray says, again, I learned it's important to show appreciation, even for the small things. Saying thank you, showing appreciation, telling white lies that you like last night's dinner. That's fine, as long as it doesn't build up inside of you on the same side of it. That's the shouting matches at some point. You know what I mean? Because you will have a bad day. I look at it as like when I grill steaks, and it's like I cut into it. I'm like, damn it, this isn't medium rare. This is medium. Like, I'm more disappointed, than like Kristen, if I'm cooking for her. It's like she's like, no, like, mine's great. I'm like, good. Look over at it. I'm like, for medium, it's good, I hope. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm more disappointed that I didn't cook it right. You know what I mean? So I don't know. And I'm not a big, I don't cook all the time. I think that the great point there from Ray and this story of his dad, I think it's, again, going back to what you're saying too, with the shouting matches, is that, and I talk about my parents influencing me. I think that there is something that you take from it, because we're all different. You either become the person you admire. Did you smoke that other one? Jesus. Still my first one.
Seriously?
Yeah. You either mine keeps going out because I'm talking too much.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think
I didn't have to relight.
You either become the person that you resent, or you become the person you admire. But I think more often it's you react as you grow up and who you are. Because I think there is everyone talks about nature versus nurture. I think there is a nature and nurture side of it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think that like, again, you could have siblings living in the same household and have more or less the same experiences, and they become who they're going to become. You know what I mean? It's not just like because this one person. It's all encompassing. And I think that's where we can take this away from this list.
Well, I know, like, my wife and I...
Kristen just gives it to the dog. No, I eat it.
My wife and I both come from divorced households. Big difference is I was 6 when my parents got divorced. I was real young.
That is young.
Jess was in college.
Different.
Completely impacted her differently than it did me.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's one of the reasons why it took her a little bit longer to go. Like, she started college before I did. She graduated 2 years after I did. It just had a bigger impact because, she was an adult and, she had that experience of having an intact, nuclear family for so much longer than I did. So like I spent more years only knowing a split household than I knew an intact household.
Yeah.
She was the other way around.
Yeah.
So so even though we both went through our parents getting divorced, it had a completely different effect on her because she was so much older.
Yeah. All right. I'm say this very briefly because I know Kristen's going to listen to this probably tomorrow. But I will say on the relationship side of things is in most of my adult life, I was, and again, nothing towards anyone because I think it's all. I think we are impacted by our childhood and upbringing, the socialization, and our more formidable years. And I say that childhood again, preteen, teen, early mid 20s now. I had relationships with people that were from divorces, right? Product of divorces, right? And there were a lot of positive times, a lot of positivity there, and a lot of good memories, right? And unfortunately, they ended at different times, right? And in different circumstances. And I think that's just the way life works sometimes. But I will also say that in my current relationship, my parents, for better or worse, it wasn't the most like affectionate or loving, marriage, but it was like they were together the whole time. And I'm dating someone now that is, coming from a house that her parents are still married and has a strong family, traditional, if you will. And I know it's going to come across weird, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. And it's there's this sense kind of underlying. You still can't take it for granted. You know what I mean? Like there's the effort there, and I think that everyone comes into that, right? But it's like there's this sense of you want, like, once you know that you want it to work, you really want it to work, right? And it's not necessarily that. I'm trying to think of how to say this without getting in trouble. No, I think that really, honestly, it's something that everything that happens in your life, it's not like, I came from that quote solid household and I've been divorced, right? I'm not saying that you're just going to smooth sail through it if you find someone that is sharing your same background, because it's never the same background, it's never the same people. But I think that if
you're not the same people,
right? I just think that as you go through it, like, you align yourself with people that are maybe more like-minded, and it could even be in like the subconscious there a little bit, career-wise as well. When you work for people that share kind of a same mindset, there's a lot more success there. You don't have to be the same personality, you don't have to have the same goals, but you have that same mindset of what is comfortable to you. I think that's a lot of the times where you open yourself up to some great success, whether it be your personal relationship or your career, or the people that are around you and your hobbies or interests. That's really where that enjoyment comes, because there is a sense of comfort. If you had that, even in the distress, or if you have a little chaotic upbringing, that could be your sense of comfort, right? So it's like, I think that you talk about the influencers, I think you are influenced throughout life, that you will have a sense of comfort. And if you have a partner, if you have a workplace, if you're around a friend group that doesn't share that sense of comfort of what you are used to, you're going to get uneasy a little bit. But if you open yourself up, maybe you'll be able to get past that. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. No right answer. No, this is just, again, I think there's something that you gravitate towards people that, opposites can attract and be successful. But I think there's sometimes that opposites in personality, but there is this sense of core comfort that that makes you feel a bit more like you're doing something right long term? You're nodding. Ray says everyone has a mixed bag of influences. They occur on a daily basis. It would be interesting to know why some stick and others don't. Not expecting an answer on that this evening, but I think I kind of refer to that when you asked me about who influenced me and all that stuff, is I kind of already went over that, and it encompasses everything that growing up. And I think that, again, having a firm belief or just understanding of like the whole socialization is that it's like everything influences you. Some influence or impact you more than others. And it's that kind of, what do you latch onto, or what do you possibly actively try to respond to? Yeah. Good seeing Bobby Hirschman on.
Yeah. Yeah, he goes late to the show, and Ray's like, for fuck's sake. No, we love to have you, Bobby.
I'll give you guys about a couple minutes if you have any other questions or things that you have for us, or if you have anything else you want us to share to the audience to spur some more conversation, and then we'll get to some closing remarks if we don't have anything out there.
One of the things that I kind of thought of recently, and this was so last week, my mother was in town, and I got to have lunch with her one day, and sitting at the table, and she's telling me stories. And at one point I was like, where the hell are all these stories coming from? And she's like, well, you don't bring up anything, so I'm just talking. And I'm like, well, I wish you'd have kept that to yourself. But no, it made me think, like, can influence, whether positive or negative, be generational? Like,
can influence be
generational? Like, passed down to generations?
Yeah.
Because and what made me think of that, so I'd heard some stories when my mom and I were having lunch about some other members in my family, and then I look at what happened with their kids, and then what their kids did, and I'm like, holy shit! Some of this stuff actually makes sense. You have people that may have been abused as a kid, not by my grandparents or parents. And I'm not saying that, but they may have been abused as a kid, and then that caused turbulent times in their house when they became an adult. And then when they had kids, like, their kids grew up to be, total fuck ups and abusive as well. Like, sometimes that negative influence, like, it can absolutely become generational, and just like,
yeah,
and it's really tough to hear. It's tough to realize that kind of stuff happens. It does, but sometimes we don't like to think about it, or pretend it doesn't exist. But when my mom was telling me about a sibling that was abused as a kid, and then I come to find out that their kids were abusive to their kids, I'm like, oh shit, this is actually starting to make sense now. And I didn't know that stuff before. I kind of wish I didn't still, but it makes more sense, like, why that person acts the way they do, why they've done the things that they've done.
Look, I mean, this is, you say it's generational. That's going back to what I was saying, is I think that you're going to get influenced or whatever it is by all of the input, right? So when you're younger, especially, going back, you talk about generational, like going back before all the stuff that, we don't necessarily, Ray says, you don't want to talk about influencers, like with social media and with the access of all the information and input that we have at our fingertips. But go back 40 years ago, you had 3 TV stations and newspaper, and it was basically your personal life.
Yeah. Like, if it didn't happen in your community or city, you didn't know, for the most part.
So yes, it is generational. We are losing that to a point because there may not be as much of that immediate circle influence, because it's everyone's bombarded with, including adults raising children, they're bombarded with input from all sides.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting. I know there's a lot of people that are very pessimistic about it, but I think it'll be interesting in a lot of ways that, you know, you hear all these adults that say, oh, I don't even watch the news anymore. You know what I mean? But then they're on their fucking phone watching Twitter. You know what I mean? That, you know, they follow the news stations, they see what's going on, they know it, but it's all pointed. Yes, I think it's very much generational. I think this is very your childhood, your upbringing, your personal career, your personal relationships, all that stuff absolutely affect how you handle things, but it's how you respond to it. So going back to Ray's thing or what you're talking about, like, so, you know, for example, on a very, very literal and surface level thing, my dad smoked, you know, on average 2 packs a day most of my life. And I said, like, to your point, like, you're like, I'm never going to drink, right? I'm never going to smoke. I smoke cigars. I don't smoke cigarettes. I have no interest in them. I have no desire to smoke cigarettes. I think I've smoked like 5 in my life, and I smoked them like cigars because I was drunk at a bar. You know what I mean? And I didn't have any more cigars. But it's not like, excuse me. I'm not gonna, like, I didn't necessarily. That's how you respond to that. There are people that their parents smoked, and they're just like, that's just what people do. And generations prior, you know, my dad smoked cigarettes. You know, my grandmother, his mom, smoked cigarettes until she was in her 70s and quit cold turkey. It's how you respond to those things. You know what I mean? It's so yes, it's always generational. But again, going back to how you respond to those things, along with the other factors that are input into your life, that I think is really where it's not necessarily you're just dealt a deck of cards that you just play with, that like you're just, I got a losing hand. It's how you can respond to it. It's not always that cut and dry. You're not always going to like, oh, I'm going to get back up. I'm going to be better than that. Well, you might still be that. And that's the nature and nurture side of it.
I remember as a kid, my dad used to smoke like cherry blends and Habitampas.
Okay.
You know, the gas station cigars. And I remember one time.
Now he smokes good stuff.
I'm getting to that.
All right.
Guess who got him on smoking the good stuff? Yeah. So I remember, like, in his truck, he had like he had like 3 cherry blends left in the box, and I hated him smoking cigars in the truck, and I snapped them. And in return, he snapped my ass, which I absolutely deserve. He never stopped smoking those cigars. Then when I go off to college, one of my biggest influences when I was in college was, you know, a gentleman that I consider my best friend now from my college days. He's the one that got me onto smoking premium cigars.
Yeah.
And like, I immediately fell in love with them. And that next Christmas, I bought 4 pairs of cigars from a tinderbox, not Tinderbox at Easton, but a tinderbox. And I bought 4 pairs. 4 of those cigars were for my dad. The exact same 4 were for me. And I gave those to my dad at Christmas. And then he and I went into the garage during Christmas and smoked cigars together.
Nice.
And ever since then, he's been smoking premium cigars. And so at a point, he influenced me to not smoke cigars. And then I had a friend influence me to smoke good cigars. And then I got my dad smoking good cigars.
It goes again, being open. It goes all the different ways, not both ways, but all the different ways. And I think that the one thing that we can kind of take into one thing we can take into the closing remarks is how do you live your life to influence others? And I think that's a big part of this, and going into kind of, you know, with you, Nate, your stepdad, and going off of Ray's comments on that, is that, you know, how do you live your life to influence others based on how you've learned, how you've been influenced. I think that's a big part of it. Are you doing anything? You know, we had that comment, right? What was it? That one of the last cookouts where we talked about, you know?
Yeah. What, like the first question was like, what do you see as problems in society? And then after you and I shared our answers, that person then came back with, well, what are you doing about it? And your immediate response was, I'm having a cookout at my house, and I also invite people to my garage every Wednesday night for a podcast to talk about this shit.
Yeah.
Because the problem is people don't know how to interact with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is, you know, the influencing part is, you know, and Kristen jokes, my girlfriend jokes a lot about like when I take like steak pictures and stuff like that. And we had steak dinner on Monday.
I influenced you, I think.
Well, with the green beans, maybe, but I will say that I get memories from 2015 where I was doing those types of things. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to take that away. I'm just saying she jokes about it. It's like, oh, you got to take your influencer pic.
I have steak and wine Sunday. You have steak and wine Monday.
All I'm saying is that it's something that they're different, like using social media. I think that you can use it as a positive, your everyday life. People work from home now. You know, I have the opportunity to be, in a sense, in the not mass public eye every day, but I'm in, you know, we have 100, 200 customers a day that we deal with. And it's like, that's dealing with people. You know, you have face-to-face interaction. One of the things that we did with doing this show, again, it's not millions of followers, but it's one of those things that it's like, you know, 3 years ago, we didn't have the Bourbon and BS community page on Facebook. And now we have 1,600 plus followers on that or people part of the community. Trying to get people engaged, and it's not always what people want, you know, like what they're expecting. Like we just had that recent new person that was like, I haven't seen a bourbon bottle on this Bourbon and BS community page. It's not necessarily what it's about, but you have some platforms out there that if you actually put yourself out there, if you have the time, you want to do it, you can put yourself out there for people. And it's not necessarily trying to like show off your life. I'm not saying like, I don't say like, oh, I'm eating this, like, you know, whatever, like $30-$40 steak and, you know, this
Wagyu,
you know, $50-$100 bottle of wine. It's like, I'm having steak and wine. And then I'll get comments here and there from people, you know, like they'll send me a picture of their, you know, what they grilled out that night. It's not a steak that takes up the whole plate, but I mean, it's a start, you know. It's like, yeah, no, how was it? Oh, it's fucking fantastic. Good.
Yeah.
It's fun to talk to people about some of that stuff. I'm not taking pictures of every meal I take, like when Instagram first came out. You know what I mean? Like I'm posting certain things and it's like you use it.
You're not the person in the restaurant whose food gets cold because you're trying to take the right picture.
No, but like even this last Monday, I grilled out and we were halfway through it. And Kristen's like, you know, well, you didn't take your picture. I was like, you know what? Tonight I just wanted to like focus on you and me. And that's it. It's being able to do both things. Is have your personal life and live your life by example. And then also be a little bit of an influencer if you want to be. And I don't think that people realize how many people that you can influence. But go ahead with your closing remarks unless you want to talk about that.
I mean, well, the start of my closing remarks, the thing I love about my wife and I's tradition of doing the steak and wine Sunday is it was something that we just started doing and eventually it became a tradition. Kind of like when you used to do your morning walks, like that was something that you were doing, you know, to deal with, you know, issues that were going on, but it got to the point where when you didn't do them, like people were reaching out to you like, hey, I didn't see pictures of your morning walk. Like, is everything all right?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I went on a walk. I just didn't take pictures or I didn't post the pictures, but like, yeah, I was still doing that. But it had such a positive impact
right
on people. And sometimes, a lot of times those come by accident. Like you're just trying to, you know, do something that's good for you and it ends up being good for other people as well. And so other people then embody that tradition or they create their own thing to do. And so even if they're doing something similar or they're doing the something different, it still had an impact because now they're trying to come up with their own thing that creates a better relationship with who they're with. So us having like our steak and wine Sunday conversations, that led to after my mother-in-law got out of the hospital and she was staying with us, it was a steak and wine Sunday that we brought up the topic or the idea of her moving in with us. And we actually had that conversation multiple weeks on that night, because that was a night where all three of us are together. We're all sitting down. We're not staring at our phones. We're not distracted by anything else. We're literally having a family dinner, and having that conversation, then led to where we are now, where my mother-in-law does live with us.
Yeah.
And there were multiple reasons that went into that. Part of that was, her health, when she had a couple aneurysms earlier this year. Not to just glance right over that, but no, if you're someone who wants to be an influencer, but not on the social media sense, the easiest thing to do is take care of yourself first and just be a decent human being. That's the easiest way, basically leading by example. If you do that, you're then a positive role model or influencer for other people, and you may not even know it. A lot of times people look up to celebrities or sports athletes and, say that they're the role model. And what was it? Charles Barkley, who someone had said to him, like, what do you think about being a role model? And he's like, I'm not a role model. Like, why would I no, I don't want to be a role model. I don't want to be that. Like, that's not who I am. Just because there's a lot of weight that comes with that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're someone who is considered a role model for other people, there's a lot to live up to, because there are people that are going to do what you do, good, bad, or otherwise.
Right.
And if you're going to be someone like that, you have a responsibility to yourself and to other people to be a good one. Now, we can all agree or disagree on what it means to be a positive role model or a positive influencer. But the first thing, the key to it is being a good person yourself and having your shit together. Like, that's where it starts. Because if you don't have your shit together, but you want to try and influence other people to get their shit together, if it comes out that you don't have your shit together, you just lost your entire credibility right then and there. And it's kind of like a pane of glass. Doesn't matter if you break it with a BB, a bullet, or a boulder. Once your reputation shatters, it is almost impossible to get it back whole the way it was. You can try and put the pieces back together, but it's not going to look quite right. There's going to be some cracks in it. Kind of like the whole kintsugi idea that we had last year when we had that podcast. So am I an influencer, Jonathan? I don't set out to be an influencer, but when I post pictures of cigars and whiskey that I'm having, I'm at least hoping that people will go out and try those. One of the things I had started doing was putting little pictures of flavor notes that I got from cigar and whiskey on there. So that way people would see, maybe this is something that I want to try. I'm not sitting there telling them that they need to go out and buy this bottle or go out and buy this cigar. I'm telling them what I'm having, what I enjoy. If they want to partake in that, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. I'm not trying to tell them what to do, but if they have questions about it, I'm more than happy to be a source of information for them. So like Monday, when I was working that golf outing and passing out cigars, there were people who were not avid cigar smokers, or they smoke cigars, but they didn't know a whole lot about it, that they were asking me questions. And so I'm sitting there just giving them information about the cigars, what the wrapper, where the filler comes from and all that stuff. And I'm just trying to give them that information, because what I found in my, decade of being in the cigar industry is there are a lot of people that they just appreciate the information, whether they retain it or not. They appreciate the passion and the knowledge that you have for those things. And it can make them want to enjoy that as much as you do, or try and learn about it and know as much as you do. But I'm not sitting there setting out to make them enjoy my hobbies the same way I am. I just want them to enjoy it if they do get into it like I do.
Nice. I think that's actually really, I guess, on par with what you were talking about with your stepdad. I would say that I put a little bit more effort into the influencing part, all jokes aside. I don't put as much time as I probably could into it. With my job now at a cigar shop, we do get people talking about like the Tasty Tuesdays that I do, the social media stuff. So I
even
still,
your focus posts,
the focus posts, I just look at it as that you have a tool out there that, there are wider circles out there, but again, I don't want to say that I'm just open to it, but it's I'm more selective to it. And, looking at this stuff, and it's funny to see these comments going through, Tim and Jonathan and Ray. They're talking about Sean Anderson. They're talking about some of these people that have been a part of this community and this podcast for a while. This is what I'll say. I really do enjoy doing this, and the main reason is because of people that do listen and give feedback. I look tired. Perfect. I am. It's a long day. It's these are my Wednesdays. I like the fact that when I talk about like being influenced by everyone and everything around me, it's being open to that and not being stubborn and just doing things your own way. There is a time and a place for that. I do like the fact that I think that, what I was leading into these closing remarks with, I put some effort into it, and it's not like overwhelming effort, but sometimes it does get in the way. My Wednesday nights are the podcast for, like you said, Nate, for the last 4.5 years. I don't reschedule. If I don't feel like doing it, I still do it. This is fun. And seeing all these people, like now Bobby Hirschman's on there, these people that I would have never met or kept in touch with other than doing this. And you can call it influencing or just being open with other people and hoping that it brings something more to people's life. That's the whole point of this for me. So I do try to live my life in a positive way, and I have my struggles and my battles and my bad days and stuff like that. And I've even had these podcasts where at this point I don't remember what I said tonight talking about this stuff, as I truly do believe that the relationships and everything else that people get from this and the positive things, once a week at least, I get positive feedback from doing what we're doing and how we had a great show. They really enjoyed a cigar. They enjoyed the whiskey. They just enjoyed seeing one of my posts. I get a lot from that. And it's not the fact that I'm trying to influence. Hang on. That's not trying to influence those people. It's just the fact that I put myself out there because I get something from this. And it's not just self-gratification. There's true value from the people that I keep in touch with or learn from or keep in touch just with on a regular basis. It's just really fulfilling. And I can even see it now being in a newer relationship with someone that now she knows people that she's never met, or that she met once. And the fact that there's these relationships that come from it, that sometimes it's not your everyday life, but it's people that you don't see every day, but you get something from. And I absolutely take full enjoyment and absolute fulfillment from that. And I think that's the true point of influencing other people, is that you want the betterment of the people that you hope to influence, and that they influence, and it's full circle back to you. So With that being said, guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Everyone's still listening. Share, like, and review it. Thanks to our sponsors. And thank you guys for the support. Love you all. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. And we will see you guys next week. Cheers.